Book 20, The Crown's Riddle, Chapter 13, The Secret of the Nine Pearls. Boss, the reason why you weren't able to kill him was these 9 soul pearls. What are these 9 soul pearls? BB flew next to Linley as well, inspecting the 9 soul pearls hovering in Linley's hands with curiosity. Boss, I don't feel anything special about these 9 pearls. Linley chuckled. When I first saw the Lord Prefect of Skymount, I didn't sense anything special about these soul pearls either. I thought that wearing a bracelet was just personal habit of his. Only when I tried to kill him multiple times with no success did I notice that these soul pearls were rather unique. How keen was Linley's judgment now? He was able to immediately tell, at a glance, that the Lord Prefect of Skymount's bracelet wasn't a divine artifact, and so Linley had taken it for a mere trinket with no value. And, indeed, the bracelet wasn't a divine artifact. Linley was able to crush the bracelet with his fingers with ease. The truly valuable items were those 9 soul pearls. Lord Prefect of Skymount, is my guess correct? Lord Linley. The Lord Prefect of Skymount's face was ashen. He hurriedly said, correct. Your guess is correct. These 9 soul pearls are a precious treasure that were naturally formed, and they contain an incomprehensible life force within them. As long as you are wearing these 9 soul pearls, an inexhaustible, endless amount of life energy will fill your entire body and soul. Although your soul attack was powerful, Lord Linley, the energy of the soul pearls continuously protected me, and so even though my soul was damaged, it was quickly healed. Molda no longer had anything left he could rely on. He had thought that by relying on his soul pearls, others wouldn't be able to kill him. And Molda's power was indeed quite great. Matching that with the soul pearls, meant that he could be considered one of the topmost commanders. This was why Molda had so confidently come to fight. After seeing Linley's unfamiliar face, he had felt all the more confident. But who would have imagined that this was Linley, the paragon who had risen to sudden prominence in the Infernal Realm? A paragon, they were the most powerful entities amongst deities. The soul pearls could protect Molda, but they weren't able to increase his attack power. In front of Linley, Molda was nothing more than a punching bag. Now that he lost those 9 soul pearls, he had nothing left at all. Oh, these soul pearls are so special. BB mumbled in surprise. Molda. Did you bind these soul pearls? Linley said calmly. No, Molda said hurriedly. Linley willed a drop of blood to emerge from his finger, which then flew towards one of the soul pearls hovering above his hand. Drip. The blood fell atop this jade green soul pearl, splattered, then rolled down and fell onto Linley's palm. It actually didn't go in. Linley said with a frown. Lord Linley, these soul pearls are a miraculous treasure which was naturally formed by the heavens, rather than a divine artifact. There is no way to bind them with blood. Molda said hurriedly. Linley gave Molda a sidelong glance, then held the 9 soul pearls within his palm. Instantly, he felt a surge of unique energy fill his entire body. Under Linley's control, this surge of energy even flooded into his soul. Comfortable. Linley felt as though his soul was being protected by this very unique type of energy. How curious. This sort of treasure, only the heavens themselves could give birth to such a thing. Linley sighed in praise. Right. Right. Molda hurriedly said. Boss, these soul pearls are quite unique, but how can you be certain that the reason why Molda was struck by your soul attack without dying was because of these pearls? BB pursed his lips. Perhaps the soul pearls are unique, but they aren't necessarily the true treasure which protected Molda from dying. Perhaps he might have another treasure as well. Molda's face changed dramatically. The best way to test it, boss, is to give this Molda yet another soul attack. If this time, Molda dies, then that proves that it really was the soul pearls which were protecting him. If he doesn't die, then it means he was lying. BB laughed as he spoke, but in the eyes of Molda, Bibi's laughter was so evil, so terrifying. Molda, what do you think? Is my reasoning correct? Bibi looked at Molda and laughed, but he didn't even attempt to hide the killing intent in his eyes. These words were like the pronouncement of a death sentence upon Molda. In terms of mentality, Bibi, a divine beast, still had a stronger desire to kill than Linley. Anyone who posed a threat to Linley or who had ever attacked Linley, as far as Bibi was concerned, such a person deserved death. Boss, if Molda doesn't die, he will cause problems in the future, eventually. He is currently the Lord Prefect of Skymount, and won't dare to take his revenge on you, boss. That's only because he isn't strong enough. But if, one day, he were to make a breakthrough and become a paragon, he probably would no longer fear you, boss. Even if he isn't able to take revenge on you, Olivier will be in danger. Bibi sent mentally. Bibi was far-sighted. Anything that might pose a threat should be killed. Lord Linley, Molda stammered in terror. Molda's current attitude was completely opposite to his earlier, brash, murderous attitude. When you thought you were strong, you attacked. When you discovered that the enemy was too strong, you submitted. After having experienced the savagery of the planar wars, Linley wouldn't be as soft-hearted as a woman. Swish. A void wave sword ripple shot forth from Linley's forehead, so fast that Molda wasn't able to react at all as it drove into his body. Molda's body trembled, and then the light disappeared from his eyes as he slumped down. Clink. A blood-red set of armor fell out from his body onto the ground. This was his defensive sovereign artifact. This time, he's really dead. Bibi laughed. Olivier, Diana, and their son, Dea, walked over now. Olivier looked at the deceased Lord Prefect, then looked towards Linley with gratitude. Linley, thank you. You helped me yet again. If the Lord Prefect didn't die, Olivier definitely would have been unable to rest easy. Thank you, Uncle Linley. Dea said as well, and then he gave the corpse of Molda a vicious look, as though placing the blame for the death of his older brother upon the Lord Prefect. When I dealt with Bonin, I prepared myself for the possible eventuality of having to deal with Molda as well. Only, I didn't expect that Molda would actually be in possession of this sort of miraculous natural treasure. Linley looked at the 9 soul pearls in his hand and sighed. How unfortunate. Molda, as suspected, has clones somewhere. Bibi dripped a drop of blood onto the armor, but it didn't go in. Forget it. Just leave it there. Linley said with a calm laugh. After having lost his most powerful divine clone, Molda is no longer much of a threat. Without his most powerful divine clone, even if Molda had a saint-level clone somewhere who was able to fuse with the divine sparks all the way to the high god level, he wouldn't be able to make any more advances. This meant that there was no hope for Molda to reach the level of paragons. Anyone not at the paragon level, as far as Linley was concerned, could be slaughtered easily by him. Humph. I'm not going to let him get anything back. Bibi waved his hand, drawing Molda's interspatial ring towards him, and then with a vicious clench and a crack, Bibi shattered the interspatial ring. If he couldn't get it, he wouldn't let Molda get it either. As for that sovereign artifact, it was made by a sovereign, and Bibi didn't dare do anything to it. Sovereigns wouldn't care about you killing an emissary, as that was the fault of the emissary for being too weak. But destroying a sovereign artifact or tossing it into chaotic space, the sovereign would be angered. The artifact was something which a sovereign had spent a tremendous amount of time and effort on, after all. This treasure isn't bad, but it's not very useful for me. Linley glanced at the 9 soul pearls. Let's go. With a thought, Linley stored the 9 soul pearls into his interspatial ring. We're off to Indigo Prefecture. Bibi laughed. Olivier looked at his wife and son, then laughed as well, content. Linley's group of 5 once more boarded their metallic life form and began to fly at high speed towards Indigo Prefecture, in the west. within Linley's interspatial ring. This was a lifeless space. A large number of items was hovering there within it, including that canteen filled with Sovereign's might, the adamantine heavy sword, blood violet, inkstones, azurite, and atop a little mountain formed from inkstones and azurite, there was a tattered, tarnished, unremarkable crown. The tattered crown just lay there. Suddenly, the 9 soul pearls appeared within that lifeless space. The 9 crystalline jade green soul pearls seemed so brilliant and beautiful. The strange thing was, that tattered crown actually levitated into the air and flew towards the 9 soul pearls, which also flew towards the tattered crown. The 9 soul pearls formed into a circle around the tattered crown. Swish! 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 The 9 soul pearls suddenly shot towards the tattered crown from each direction, instantly merging into the settings of the crown. And then, everything turned calm again. A green light flowed atop the tattered crown, causing it to emanate a faint green aura. It was no longer as tattered and tarnished as it was before. There were 9 small settings and 1 large setting to this crown. The 9 small settings looped around the crown from front to back, while the center front of the crown had a large, rhombus-shaped setting. This rhombus-shaped setting was completely empty. Linley had no idea as to what had just happened within his interspatial ring. Previously, Linley had spent quite some time inspecting the tattered crown, and after becoming a soul mutate, Linley had inspected it yet again. But he couldn't find anything special about it, and thus, he had tossed it into his interspatial ring and stopped paying attention to it. Perhaps, one day, Linley would take out the crown or the pearls, only to discover the secrets of the crown. But when would that happen? No one could say. A metallic life form shaped like a vicious tiger floated there above the mountains. This enormous metallic life form had more than 100 people within it, with the leader being a silver-haired, silver-robed Molda. He was standing at the front of the metallic life form, staring through the translucent metal towards the distant mountains ahead. "Go there and reclaim the armor," the silver-haired Molda said coldly. "Yes, Lord Prefect." The white-browed man knew exactly where the battle had taken place. He immediately led a squad of 10 people towards that gorge, flying at high speed. The silver-haired Molda stared coldly at the distant mountains, his heart filled with a murderous intent. He could still sense the presence of the sovereign artifact. Clearly, Linley's group didn't take it away or destroy it. "My power is now much weaker. If someone were to challenge me," this was what Molda was concerned about now. As a Lord Prefect and one of the 108 Azuras of the Infernal Realm, he had to face challengers, with the loser giving up the position and the winner becoming the new Azura or Lord Prefect. Thus, Molda had to reacquire that sovereign artifact. With a defensive sovereign artifact, Molda was confident in his ability to maintain his position. A long time later, the figures of the white-browed man and his squad flashed forward, with the white-browed man holding that blood-colored armor in his hands. Humph! The silver-haired Molda's eyes flashed, and a large corridor instantly appeared within the metallic life form. The blood-colored armor flew through the corridor towards Molda, then entered Molda's body. "Move out. We're going back," Molda said calmly. "Yes, Lord Prefect," the group replied in chorus. And then, Molda strode to a private room deeper in the rear cabins of the metallic life form. The door to the rear cabin shut. There was no hint of light within this room. The silver-haired Mord sat down quietly in the meditative position. Within the gloomy, dark room, Mord's face appeared equally gloomy and dark. His wolf-like eyes, in this dark room, appeared all the more terrifying and heart-shaking. "You ruined my son, then also ruined my future prospects." In that room, Molda didn't need to conceal in the slightest his killing intent. A wild, savage aura filled the room, but because of Molda's Godrealm, the aura didn't leak outside at all, and so those subordinates outside had no idea what was occurring within. Molda's eyes flashed savagely. "Fine. Since you ruined me, then I will ruin you as well. Unfortunately, I've already destroyed that sheet of special paper. Otherwise, it would be much easier for me to convince the sovereigns. With just a simple plan, I could easily cause Linley to die. But now that I destroyed that paper, it will be a bit tricky. Molda pondered silently for a moment, considering what to do, then laughed coldly. Still, it doesn't matter. Although the paper was destroyed, at least I still know what the secret is. Since the soul pearls are no longer in my hands, there's no point to keeping this secret. When Molda thought about what was going to occur, he couldn't help but feel a hint of eagerness in his heart. You ruined me. So I'll ruin you. Molda growled. I will publicize this secret, I will make it known to everyone, make it known to all of the sovereigns. His voice, filled with rage, made this secret room feel so sinister, so cold. Book 20, The Crown's Riddle, Chapter 14, True, False. Although he wanted to make the secret public, this wasn't actually an easy thing to do. If Linley were to learn of the secret before it made its way to the sovereigns, then Linley would probably immediately return and immediately kill Molda. Molda pondered for a moment, then came up with a simple scheme. Skymount Prefecture. The Lord Prefect's estate. The main hall. 100 High God warriors were standing respectfully before the main hall, awaiting the Lord Prefect's arrival. I wonder what the Lord Prefect summoned us all here for. They all mumbled to themselves, but then, moments later, a person emerged from a side door of the main hall. It was the silver-haired Molda. Molda's cold, sinister gaze swept across these high gods, and all of them instantly stood up straight, not daring to look around or seem the slightest bit indolent. Molda strode to the front of the hall. Seating himself atop his throne, Molda swept the people before him with his cold gaze. I have a secret assignment for all of you. If you reveal this assignment, whoever reveals it will have his entire clan put to death. Military order was quite strict in the prefectural armies. Still, annihilating an entire clan because of revealing a secret was unheard of. The 100 high gods all felt their hearts tremble. They felt misery in their hearts. How was it that they were the ones to end up with this mission? But don't worry. As long as this mission isn't revealed, nothing will happen. Molda said calmly. In addition, once you accomplish it, every single person will be awarded 1 billion inkstones. All of the high gods were shocked. These high gods spent countless years building up their wealth, and yet still probably only had a few 100 million inkstones. They weren't 7-star fiends, they didn't have an extravagant amount of money. A single assignment with a reward of 1 billion inkstones. This was an astronomical amount of money. Molda waved his hand, and one piece of black paper after another appeared in front of him. Whoosh! These pieces of paper suddenly flew downwards towards each person. Every single one of the 100 high gods received a piece of paper. These high gods couldn't help but look towards the paper, and with but a single glance, they completely memorized the contents of it. At the same time, the faces of the 100 high gods completely changed. This secret was truly terrifying. Did you see it? Molda let out a cold laugh. You don't need to worry about if this information is true or false, but you must remember one thing. You cannot leak it out. If you leak it out, Molda swept the group below with his gaze. Your subordinates do not dare. After one person fell to a knee, the other 99 soldiers all hurriedly knelt as well. Excellent. Molda said calmly. 15 of you, stand over there. You 15, go over there. And that leaves 25 of you. You will form 6 squads. Molda's divine power flew out, easily spreading out across 6 people in the 6 groups. The first 5 groups had 15, while the last one had 25. Squad 1, you will head to the western part of the Infernal Realm, to the Carol continent. The 15 of you will hand those sheets of paper to 15 different people. This is the list of names and addresses. Remember, on the journey, no matter what, do not let this information be leaked out. Molda once more instructed, then sent a black parchment flying towards Squad 1. Squad 2, you will head to the eastern part of the Infernal Realm, to the Jade Float continent. This is the list of names and addresses. Squad 3, you will head to the southern part of the Infernal Realm, to the Muja continent. Squad 4, head to the northern part of the Infernal Realm, the Redbud continent. Squad 5, the 5 of you, head to the Starmist Sea, and Squad 6, you head to the Chaotic Sea. Molda delivered the lists of names and addresses to these people. These names were primarily names of sovereigns' emissaries. But of course, there were also many Lord Prefect level figures. The wider the net, the greater the chances of attracting interest from sovereigns. 6 of the 7 major regions of the Infernal Realm had squads assigned. The only region not assigned was the Blood Ridge continent. Molda knew very well that if he spread this news out to the Blood Ridge continent, it would most likely quickly spread to Linley's heirs. Each of you, leave a divine clone here in my estate. Molda said calmly. You have to keep a tight watch on each other. If anyone leaks the secret, immediately report it to me. The reason Molda selected these individuals was because they were all fairly loyal, and because they all had divine clones. Yes, Lord Prefect. 100 clones emerged. Then head out. Molda didn't wish to waste any time. The 100 high gods assented, and then separated into 6 squads and left. With the members of the squads keeping an eye on the other members, and given how deadly the consequences of exposing the secret was, as well as the rich reward of 1 billion inkstones for successfully completing the mission, Molda felt confident that nothing would go amiss. Molda laughed calmly. Blood Ridge continent? I'll go make that notification. Molda was still an emissary of the Blood Ridge sovereign. It wasn't hard for him to go pay a visit to the sovereign. If he went in person, there was no way that Linley would learn the secret. That very day, Molda flew out of the castle and headed towards the residence of the Blood Ridge sovereign. The Blood Ridge continent. Cloudlink Mountains. Deep within the Cloudlink Mountains, there was a lake that was 1,000 kilometers in circumference. The air above the lake was perpetually covered with mist and fog. This sort of scene was actually quite common in the Infernal Realm, and many few people would pay attention to it. As for those people who lived near the Cloudlink Mountains, they all knew that anyone who entered deep into the middle of the lake would disappear into the mist, and then, dazed, reappear on the shore. No one knew what was in the center. Splash, the waters of the lake gently rolled out in waves, lapping at the shore. A figure descended from the skies at high speed, landing at the edges of the lake. It was Molda. Molda stood there at the side of the lake for a moment, then flew into that endless fog. At the center of the lake, there was a small island. The island was filled with all sorts of beautiful flowers, and all sorts of flying birds that lived here peacefully. On the island, there was a plain, unadorned, cone-shaped palace. In the rear side of the palace, amidst the flowers, there was a stone table, where 2 men were seated, facing each other, staring raptly at the many chess pieces on the table. Behind these 2 men, there were 2 maids, whose faces were covered in smiles. One of the 2 men had long, blood-red hair. This man had a wavy, blood-colored tattoo on his face. He was currently smiling, his eyes gleaming as he stared at the chess pieces. Opposite him was a silver-haired, hawk-nosed man. This hawk-nosed man had 2 long, narrow eyes. Occasionally, a hint of a cold aura would flash within his eyes, capable of causing one to tremble. Terracia Tele 11 ya, you lose again, ha ha. The blood-haired man said with a loud laugh. Another one, another one. I just learned this game. The hawk-nosed man said hurriedly. Bosan Boshen, you've been playing for years. Fine, let's play again. You'll still lose though. The blood-haired man said with a laugh. This was a game with 256 pieces representing soldiers and generals. Although it seemed to be simple, it actually contained within it many different ways of mobilizing armies. It also required a person to be adaptive and act based on the opponent's situation. The more powerful one's soul was, the more complicated one's thought patterns would become, and the more interesting this game would be. In addition, one side would only win after all of the pieces of the other side were completely eliminated. Even if one was slightly losing at the beginning, one still had a chance to win by using fewer numbers to overcome superior numbers. Different situations required different resolutions. If one managed to calculate things out thoroughly, a single game could last for a very long time. These two people could spend several years playing a single game. This was a war simulation game that a general in a material plane had developed to be used to help train military officers. But sovereigns with eternal life who had no real pursuits loved to find and play these time-consuming games. This game of the 256 soldiers and generals, where did you find it? The hawk-nosed man laughed. This? I discovered it from the Saga material plane. I must say, this game is far more complicated and exciting than those games I played in the past. It's quite fun. The blood-haired man laughed as he began to control his pieces and make them move. Those two women smiled as they watched, quietly chatting through divine sense. Sovereigns feel bored as well. Lord Teresia, sovereign of wind, probably won't be able to win. Last time, the chief sovereign of destruction competed against our sovereign for 1,000 years without winning a single match. Right at this moment, a maid flew over from afar, then bowed and said, "Sovereign, Molda has come. He has an important matter to discuss with you, sovereign." Molda? Why is he coming at a time like this? The blood-rich sovereign, Bosan, frowned. The hawk-nosed man laughed. "Ha ha, Bosan, hurry up and deal with him. Don't try to rearrange the pieces and don't try to cheat. I've memorized all of the pieces' locations." The blood-rich sovereign, Bosan, gave Teresia a glance, and then walked away. Within the sovereign's main hall, the Lord Prefect of Skymount, Molda, was standing respectfully in front of the main hall. He saw a bloody mirage suddenly appear, and then, there in the main hall, the blood-rich sovereign took form. Molda raised his head. Seeing the blood-rich sovereign, he couldn't help but feel his heart tremble, and he hurriedly knelt down. "Is there something you need from me?" the blood-rich continent said calmly. The blood-rich sovereign was a lofty, exalted sovereign, after all. He might jest and jape with the other sovereigns, but in front of deities, he, a sovereign, was far beyond them. "Sovereign, I just learned of a tremendous, heaven-shaking secret," Molda said respectfully. "Oh." The blood-rich sovereign couldn't help but give Molda a careful look. "Speak." "Sovereign, please look at this." Molda produced a black piece of parchment. The blood-rich sovereign's gaze fixed upon it, and instantly, that black parchment flew over towards him, then hovering in front of him. Sweeping it with a glance, the blood-rich sovereign's face changed slightly as he then looked downwards towards Molda in surprise. Molda remained on his knees, not daring to speak. "Where did you obtain this information from?" the blood-rich sovereign said in a low voice. "How could a scroll containing such information possibly be made from such ordinary paper?" "I acquired it by accident," Molda said hurriedly. He didn't dare say that he had already acquired the 9 pearls previously. If he did, the sovereign might be so infuriated at the fact that he hadn't offered it right away that he might kill Molda. There was nothing Molda could do. He had already destroyed that original piece of paper. Would sovereigns necessarily believe it when they saw an earth-shaking revelation on an ordinary piece of paper? If that green paper was still here, the sovereign would definitely believe it. Because sovereigns, at a glance, would know exactly where that green paper came from. Naturally, they would believe the words it contained. But the words on an ordinary piece of paper, would the sovereigns believe it? You claim that Linley has those 9 soul pearls. The blood-rich sovereign said. I'm not the one making the claim. It is this piece of paper which states it. Molda didn't dare say anything else. This secret was simply too great. If he got involved, then he, a Lord Prefect, would probably lose his little life. Your most powerful divine clone is dead? Who killed it? The blood-rich sovereign suddenly asked. Molda was stunned. It was Linley who destroyed his most powerful divine clone. If the sovereign wished to investigate, this would be fairly easy to discern. If one was to lie to a sovereign, one would have to consider what sort of lie one was going to tell. If one was going to tell a lie that would be easily discovered, it would probably be better to tell the truth instead. But if the lie couldn't be discovered, then never admit it, even under threat of death. It was Linley who killed it? Molda admitted it? The blood-rich sovereign suddenly rose to his feet. Molda couldn't help but feel startled. Humph! The blood-rich sovereign icily swept Molda with his gaze, then barked, Molda, if an Overgod issued a mission, the paper on which the mission was written would definitely not be ordinary paper. How is it that you dare counterfeit information of such gravity? I didn't. Molda said hurriedly, terrified. The blood-rich sovereign stood there in his hall, staring down at the kneeling Molda. In a calm voice, he said, Molda, you made 3 mistakes. First of all, a mission issued by the Overgods would definitely not come on a piece of paper like this. Second, if an Overgod issued a mission, even if it involved 3 talismans, the Overgod would at most give a basic description of the 3 talismans. The Overgod would definitely not name someone in specific as carrying a talisman. Even if the Overgod was going to do so, the Overgod would clearly state the locations of all 3 talismans. Why would the Overgod just mention one? And third, your most powerful divine clone, Molda, just so happened to have been destroyed by Linley. This information states that Linley acquired the 9 soul pearls. How could there be such a coincidence? And you are the first person to bring me this information? This is all too coincidental, isn't it? Molda's face changed. Humph, Molda, because you have served me sincerely and diligently for so many years, I will spare your life. Begone. The blood-rich sovereign said calmly. No rush, no rush. Talismans from the Overgods. Let me see. A figure suddenly appeared in the main hall. It was that hawk-nosed man. Go ahead and look. You heard what I said earlier, right? The blood-rich sovereign said calmly. The hawk-nosed man swept the parchment with his gaze, then nodded slightly. The likelihood that the information your subordinate provided is true, is quite low. The paper is wrong, and the information only mentions a single person, Linley. And your subordinate just so happens to have a great enmity with Linley. It is quite odd. In addition, it has already been countless years since the last time the Overgods issued a mission. However, the hawk-nosed man laughed calmly. If your subordinate wanted to harm Linley, how could he come up with something like this on his own? Ever since the universe was created, the Overgods have only issued 6 missions. There are very few deities who even know that such a thing exists. Thus, I believe there is a chance that this is real. That's just the first point. The second point is, based on how long it has been since the 6th mission, I have the feeling that it is about time for the Overgods to issue another mission. It has been countless years. Haha, Bosan, I'm not busy anyhow, so I might as well go take a look. Haha. The hawk-nosed man disappeared from within that hall. Book 20, The Crown's Riddle, Chapter 15, The Sovereign Descends. Within the main hall, Molda remained on his knees. But upon seeing the Sovereign of Wind suddenly depart, he felt a surge of wild joy in his heart. Based on the conversation they had, it seems this person was a sovereign as well. Good. Although the blood-rich sovereign didn't believe me, At least one sovereign has gone, this Linley. Even if he hands over the 9 soul pearls, he will find it hard to avoid death. When Molda thought about what that parchment had written on it, he couldn't help but feel smug. If he had described things clearly, perhaps Linley would simply hand over the 9 soul pearls, and the sovereign would release Linley. But, in disseminating the news, Molda had changed things slightly. Although he wasn't able to make his scheme perfect in such a short period of time, as Molda saw it, it was enough to make Linley die. Linley, oh, Linley, a paragon is going to die, just like that. Molda mused to himself. Molda. A cold voice suddenly rang out. Sovereign. Molda hurriedly pressed his forehead against the floor, kowtowing. The blood-rich sovereign's cold gaze fell down upon Molda from up high. I ask you this. Is the information contained in the parchment true or false? Are you certain of the information? The blood-rich sovereign was still quite surprised that Molda was able to deliver a piece of paper like this. The words of the Sovereign of Wind were correct. How long ago had it been since an Overgod had issued a mission? Very few people even knew about such a thing. Even if Molda wanted to make something up, how would he even know about it? Sovereign, your subordinate doesn't know if it is true or false. Molda said respectfully. Your subordinate simply came in possession of this parchment. Because the information it contained was simply too astonishing, I knew that you, Sovereign, would probably be intrigued by it. And so I immediately came to give it to you, Sovereign. Molda wouldn't dare testify as to whether it was true or false. If he dared to testify regarding its veracity, then it meant that he, Molda, had seen the true original. Scram. The blood-rich sovereign snapped. Yes. Molda hurriedly bowed with respect, then left. But there, at the front of the main hall, the blood-rich sovereign began to furrow his brows while standing there. Why did Molda have to come now, instead of earlier or later? Teresia just so happened to be here when Molda came. Now that Teresia knows this, things will be tricky. As he pondered, the blood-rich sovereign stretched out his divine sense. Soon, the blood-rich sovereign's divine sense spread out to cover the entire blood-rich continent. Moments later, the blood-rich sovereign retracted his divine sense. Shaking his head and laughing, his body also flickered, then disappeared from the main hall. As for Molda, he traversed the hazy white mist, then quickly departed. Humph. As soon as I retrieved my sovereign artifact, I immediately began to plan this out, and then I delivered this news to the sovereigns. Even as fast as Linley travels, I imagine he probably hasn't reached Indigo Prefecture yet. Molda was very efficient in carrying things out. He was afraid that if too much time passed, there would be new variables. Thus, he had traveled here by himself at top speed to notify the sovereign. As for the sovereigns, if they were to chase after Linley, their speed would be terrifyingly fast. Mountains rose, one after the other in a never-ending chain. A metallic life form was traversing the skies. We've already passed through the Indigo Prefecture border. In a short period of time, we will reach the Skirite Mountains. Linley, standing at the front of the metallic life form, stared at the outside world through the translucent metal. He laughed while speaking. Indigo Prefecture. Diana and Olivier both stood there as well, staring into the distance. Suddenly. Whoosh! A terrifying tornado suddenly appeared out of nowhere in the skies, surrounding Linley's metallic life form, causing the world to suddenly grow dim and hazy. What's going on? Bibi was shocked. Not good. Linley's face changed dramatically. The sudden descent of this tornado caught even him completely off guard. The person who had just come was too terrifying. Linley didn't have any reservations. With the thought, he instantly spread out Earth-type sovereign power, forming a protective barrier around the 5 of them. The entire metallic life form trembled, then was blown into smithereens. Linley's group of 5 were still completely dazed, but right at this moment, the tornado vanished. Linley looked in front of him. There was a man currently standing in midair in front of them. This person had long silver hair, a hawk nose, and pair of slender eyes. The man's gaze was like a knife, making those who saw his gaze feel coldness in their hearts. This silver-haired man looked calmly at Linley's group of 5. "Boss, who is he?" BB sent mentally. The faces of Olivier, Diana, and their son Dea changed dramatically. Who else could it be? Aside from a sovereign, who could possibly suddenly appear in front of us without me sensing anything? Linley sent back. And then, smiling, Linley bowed towards the man in front of him. "Linley of Indigo Prefecture greets you, Sovereign." After having met with the chief sovereign of Death and the Abyssal Fruit Tree, Linley understood one thing. Sovereigns might appear as an energy construct or with their true bodies, or in the shape of a human. In short, one couldn't judge a sovereign through appearance, only by power. A girl might appear before you, but that girl could very well be a sovereign. There was no way at all to judge such a person's strength from the outside. The silver-haired man revealed a hint of a smile on his face as well. "Oh, you are able to infuse will? You really are a paragon. You were able to ascertain my identity so soon." This sovereign of wind could tell from the barrier Linley had created with earth-type sovereign power that there was a surge of will infused within it. More importantly, Linley didn't waste a single bit of his sovereign power. This made it simple to judge Linley's power. "Sovereign, might I ask why you have stopped us?" Linley smiled as he bowed. "Please instruct me. The rest of you, step aside." The Sovereign of Wind gave a calm glance to BB and the others. As sovereigns saw it, the fewer deities who knew about Overgod talismans and missions, the better. Sovereigns felt that deities weren't even qualified to know about these things. Linley was a paragon, and so he could speak amiably with Linley, but the Sovereign of Wind didn't want the other 4 nearby to listen in. "Leave for now." Linley glanced at them. Knowing that this person was a sovereign, BB didn't dare say anything. He, Olivier, and the other 2 immediately flew away. Oliver's son, Dea, stared in amazement and disbelief at the Sovereign of Wind. Clearly, Dea was very curious about the legendary sovereigns. Moments later, BB and the others were thousands of kilometers away. "Sovereign, there is nobody nearby aside from us now." Linley looked at the silver-haired man in front of him. "My request is very simple." The Sovereign of Wind laughed calmly as he glanced at Linley. "A Overgod talisman, in the hands of a deity, is completely useless. It's best if you hand over the Overgod talisman you possess to me." Linley couldn't help but feel completely lost. "Overgod talisman? What Overgod talisman?" Linley asked. The silver-haired man's eyes had a hint of coldness flash through them. With an icy snort, he said, "What, do you want to lie to my face and deceive me?" Actually, the sovereign was now rather puzzled as well. By the looks of it, it seems as though this Linley really has no idea what an Overgod talisman is. But then again, who knows? If a paragon wants to put on an act, I wouldn't necessarily be able to see through him. "Sovereign, I am willing to swear an oath in the name of the Overgods that I truly have no idea what an Overgod talisman is," Linley said hurriedly. The silver-haired man felt puzzled now. "Sovereign, what is this Overgod talisman of which you speak?" Linley said, puzzled. "Based on what I know, the 4 Overgods are the personifications of the 4 edicts. They shouldn't have any human emotions. Why would there be Overgod talismans?" But as soon as he spoke, Linley knew that he was wrong. If they didn't have human emotions, did that necessarily mean they couldn't issue talismans? Where did Overgod artifacts come from, then? Since there was such a thing as an Overgod artifact, then naturally there could be Overgod talismans as well. But this silver-haired man thought that Linley didn't know about the existence of Overgod talismans and Overgod artifacts. He said calmly, since overgods are able to take the form of a person if they choose, why is it that you think you can understand them? Based on what I know, of the 3 talismans, the 9 soul pearls are in your hands, correct? The 9 soul pearls of the 3 talismans. Linley couldn't help but say, startled. Linley was indeed startled, because he knew what this person was speaking of. This sovereign has come to find me for an Overgod talisman. So, he is referring to those 9 soul pearls which allowed Molda to stay alive. That's the Overgod talisman. No wonder it is so unique and has such incomprehensible power. So it is an Overgod talisman, but what are they used for? At this moment, Linley truly wanted to send his divine sense into his interspatial ring to investigate those 9 soul pearls. However, with the sovereign in front of him, Linley didn't dare act in such a way. Linley didn't know what sort of detection powers a sovereign possessed. Given the divine powers of a sovereign, however, most likely they would be able to pay attention to anything he did. If Linley was to immediately investigate his interspatial ring, wouldn't the sovereign connect it all together? There are a total of 3 Overgod talismans. Linley had a completely stunned look on his face. The sovereign of wind looked closely at Linley, then let out a cold laugh. Linley, although you have become a paragon, you are still a deity. An Overgod talisman is useless to you. I urge you to hand over this Overgod talisman. Don't say that you don't have it. I know that the 9 soul pearls are in your hands. I will give you just a single chance. The sovereign of wind said calmly. If you hand over the 9 soul pearls now, I will spare your life. But if you try to dissemble even the slightest bit, then don't blame me for killing you, then taking the Overgod talisman from you. The sovereign of wind actually wasn't completely confident about whether or not Linley had those 9 soul pearls either. In fact, whether the Overgods had even issued a mission, or if there were even 3 Overgod talismans, was unverified. However, to these sovereigns who possessed eternal life, there were very few things capable of drawing their interest. Overgod talismans, however, were things which were more than enough to drive them insane with excitement. If there was even the slightest chance of it being true, the sovereign of wind wanted to try and trick Linley into admitting it. He pretended to be completely confident. If Linley did actually have the 9 soul pearls, he might be nervous and thus hand it over. Linley's heart clenched. Can it be that the sovereign knew that I acquired those 9 soul pearls from Molda? Only my people know about this, and Molda himself. Can it be that it was Molda who told the sovereign? But Molda and I have a huge enmity between us. If he wanted to entrap me, it shouldn't be as simple as this. Linley hesitated. Sovereign, just now, I told you that I am willing to swear an oath in the name of the Overgods. Why are you saying such things? Can it be that I would dare lie to the Overgods? Linley said hurriedly. I, Linley, swear by the Overgod of fate that before the sovereign told me about Overgod talismans, I knew nothing whatsoever about Overgod talismans. If I say a single false word, let my soul be shattered and dispersed. Linley looked solemnly at the sovereign of wind. Indeed, the sovereign of wind frowned. An oath to the Overgods wasn't something a person would casually make. After all, the universe itself was controlled by the edicts. Can it be that Linley really has no idea? That the news was false? The sovereign of wind mused, puzzled. Teresia. A voice rang out. Linley saw that in the distance, a blood-robed figure had suddenly emerged. A blood-red robe, and blood-red hair. The newcomer's aura was even more overbearing and tyrannical than the sovereign of winds. He flew over unhappily. Teresia, Linley belongs to my blood-rich continent. You can't act wildly. Molda spouted some rubbish, and so you believed him? Overgod talismans. How many years has it been since they appeared? How could they now have appeared out of nowhere? Teresia was startled. The words of the blood-rich sovereign as good as told Linley that they weren't completely sure either. The Sovereign of Wind, Teresia, sent mentally, "Boson, what's going on with you? How could you tell the truth in front of Linley? Aren't you as good as trying to help him out? He's just a deity. Why act like this?" The Sovereign of Wind was very unhappy. He didn't understand why the Blood-Ridge Sovereign was helping Linley. As he saw it, the Blood-Ridge Sovereign should join forces with him to make Linley hand over the talisman. "I heard everything Linley said." The Blood-Ridge Sovereign swept Linley with his gaze, and then looked back at Teresia. He swore an oath by the Overgods. How can this be false? In addition, the news stated that the 9 soul pearls were placed alongside the Overgod decree. If Linley had both the 9 soul pearls and the Overgod decree, how could he not know what an Overgod talisman is? Clearly, Molda was lying. Or, to put it another way, the news he brought was false. The Sovereign of Wind had to admit that the Blood-Ridge Sovereign's words made sense. Overgod decree? What's that? Linley was secretly startled. But then, Linley suddenly understood. This Molda really wanted to kill me. Linley was shocked. If I was caught off guard and immediately handed over the 9 soul pearls, most likely the silver-haired sovereign would then demand the Overgod decree. And if I didn't hand it over? The sovereign, after acquiring the 9 soul pearls, would definitely believe that the information he had received was real and might very well then, for the sake of acquiring the Overgod decree, kill me and then inspect my interspatial ring. Book 20, The Crown's Riddle, Chapter 16, A Tribulation. Linley secretly celebrated. Fortunately, he had suspected Molda of plotting against him, and that this scheme shouldn't be a simple one. Thus, from the very beginning, he had staunchly insisted on swearing an Overgod oath. And indeed, there were no problems with Linley's oath to the Overgods, although he had the 9 soul pearls. Prior to this, he truly knew nothing whatsoever about the Overgod talismans. But the Sovereign of Wind didn't realize this. This was because, according to that sheet of paper, Linley had acquired both the 9 soul pearls as well as the Overgod decree. As Teresia, Sovereign of Wind, viewed it, if the information was true, then Linley should know what Overgod talismans are. But if the news was false, then Linley wouldn't know. By the looks of it, Linley truly didn't know. That meant the news should be false. This logic seemed flawless. Actually, what the Sovereign of Wind didn't realize was that Molda was a victim of his own cleverness. The news on that sheet of paper contained both truths and falsehoods. Molda's actions were intended to make it so that even if Linley handed over the soul pearls, he would still be pursued by the sovereigns. Since Linley wouldn't be able to hand over the Overgod decree, then the sovereign would probably kill Linley to seize it. The information was partly true and partly false, so as to cause Linley's death. What he didn't realize was that, precisely because the information was partly true and partly false, Linley actually managed to dodge this tribulation. It truly was a case where one was a victim of one's own cleverness. It seems this information is probably false. The silver-haired sovereign, Teresia, said calmly. Only you would be so bored as to believe in it. The Blood-Ridge sovereign snickered. Linley finally let out a mental sigh of relief. But then, the corners of Teresia's narrow eyes once more turned to Linley and the interspatial ring on his finger. Laughing calmly, he said, "However, Linley, given how confident you are in your innocence, fine, then. Hand over your interspatial ring to me and let me look through it. If there is nothing inside, then this news is clearly false. Oh, and bring all of your divine clones out as well. Let me inspect all of their interspatial rings." Linley's heart lurched. Inspect his interspatial rings. Linley knew very well that those 9 pearls were right inside his interspatial ring. If I hand over those 9 soul pearls, he will be absolutely certain that the information he gained was real, and would definitely try to force me to hand over the Overgod decree. I won't be able to hand it out, and this sovereign will probably mercilessly kill me. Linley understood this. By now, even though he had the 9 soul pearls, he definitely couldn't hand them over. In addition, Overgod talismans, one could tell just from the name that these things would surely attract the attention of many sovereigns. If he were to admit having the soul pearls, even if this sovereign of wind didn't kill him, most likely one of the other sovereigns would. He would never again be able to live a peaceful life. Sovereign. Linley had a look of anger and humiliation on his face. I, Linley, have trained for so many years and finally become a paragon. You are a sovereign, yes, but even common mortals can grow angry, much less me, Linley. Faced with your repeated questions, sovereign, I, Linley, provided you with repeated answers. I even swore an oath by the Overgod of fate. What else do you want? The sovereign of wind was stunned. Linley stood there in midair. He stared at the sovereign of wind, not shrinking back at the slightest. Instead, he started to laugh. You want my divine clones to come out? Fine. With a thought, Linley transformed into 5 different people as his other 4 divine clones all emerged. 4 divine clones. The sovereign of wind, Teresia, was startled. Generally speaking, most deities trained in one type of law, with a few who trained in 2. There were very few who trained in 3 types of laws, but Linley actually trained in 4. This was indeed astonishing. You are quite wise. Teresia said emotionlessly. Linley and Teresia stared at each other. Linley showed no hint of subservience or humility as he said calmly, Sovereign, my 5 clones have, in total, 5 interspatial rings. But I, Linley, feel that I have already demonstrated sufficient sincerity. I've even swore an oath by the Overgods, and yet you still want to investigate my interspatial rings. Fine then. Investigate away. The 5 interspatial rings are all there. However, pardon me, Linley, for not removing my binding from them. I, Linley, am a high god paragon, not your slave. If you want to investigate my interspatial rings, then just go ahead and kill me. Linley stared at Teresia. Linley's intentions were clear. You are powerful. You are a sovereign. But I'm not something that you can toy around with as you please. If you truly want to be shameless, fine, then. Come and kill me. The sovereign of wind, Teresia, stared at Linley, puzzled, like a viper staring at his prey. Sovereigns cared about face as well. High god paragons were emperors amongst deities. They too cared about face. Given that Teresia wasn't completely certain of the situation, for him to treat Linley in this manner, forcing him to swear an oath and then still insisting on checking all of his interspatial rings, was indeed rather excessive. Most likely, a paragon who had even a bit of a temper would rather die than suffer this sort of humiliation. Teresia. The face of the blood-rich sovereign sank as he watched this happen. He said angrily, Linley has already sworn an oath by the Overgods. In addition, the information you received came on a piece of ordinary paper, rather than through an Overgod decree. You intend to search through all 5 of his interspatial rings. Once word of this spreads, the sovereign of wind, Teresia, began to worry. Although Linley said that he will let me search, he meant for me to kill him, then search. He's clearly forcing my hand. It wouldn't be an issue if I found those 9 soul pearls, I would be proven right. But if I kill him and don't find them, then I would have unjustly accused him. Once this news spreads out, I would truly lose face. Teresia was hesitating. Sovereign, if you want to investigate, then please do so. I, Linley, have something to attend to. I can't accompany you any longer. Linley said solemnly. As for that Molda you mentioned, sovereigns, not long ago, I killed his most powerful divine clone. He clearly came up with this information so as to unjustly accuse me. If you don't plan to investigate any further, sovereign, Then I'm going to go find Molda. Humph, I didn't pull up grass by the roots and exterminate all his clones, I didn't expect he would repay me by doing this. Teresia frowned. Right. In the palace of the Blood-Ridge Sovereign, he had learned that Linley had killed Molda's most powerful divine clone. The Blood-Ridge Sovereign sent secretly, Teresia, you need to pay more attention to your status. You are a sovereign. Given what has happened, are you still going to insist on investigating? Boson, are you going to stop me? By the looks of things, it seems you are standing on Linley's side. Teresia sent back. I'm not the one stopping you. Let me tell you something. The Redbud Sovereign, she asked me to take good care of Linley. The Blood-Ridge Sovereign sent back. In addition, based on what I know, Linley was in the planar battlefield not long ago and just recently returned. Where would he have acquired an Overgod talisman from? This information is clearly false. Even if an Overgod talisman exists, Linley isn't necessarily the one carrying it. And let's say that there really is one, and Linley really is the one carrying it. What, do you want to try and fight over the Overgod talisman? What, why can't I? Teresia sent back. I know that you are a paragon in your laws. But you are simply a lesser sovereign. Later, when the storm comes, you should know that in each of the past 6 missions, it was a chief sovereign who succeeded. Over the course of the Overgod mission, sovereigns fell. You truly want to get involved? Teresia hesitated. In addition, this news is completely false. The Blood-Ridge Sovereign sent. If it was true, how could it be that there was no hint of it before this? How could there be such a coincidence, that we just so happened to be the first to learn of it? How could there be such a coincidence, that the news was sent over by Molda? Who just coincidentally happened to have had one of his clones killed by Linley. And Linley, he's a paragon, yet would rather die than hand it over? Do you really think this is possible? Overgod talismans are useless to him. Teresia was convinced. Linley has a relationship with the Redbud Sovereign. Teresia sent back. Teresia was just a lesser sovereign, while the Redbud Sovereign was an intermediate sovereign. More importantly, the Redbud Sovereign was birthed from the Amethyst Mountains, and was the first Amethyst God Beast. She was countless times more powerful than Rice Gem. Even Teresia was somewhat afraid of the Redbud Sovereign. Of course he does. You can ask around. Linley specializes in using her Amethyst space. The Amethyst space technique is the supreme technique of the Redbud Sovereign. The Blood-Ridge Sovereign sent back. The Blood-Ridge Sovereign was right there. There was no way Teresia would be allowed to act against Linley. In addition, the preponderance of the evidence and facts available indicated that the news was false. He, Teresia, had the exalted status of sovereign. He couldn't embarrass himself like this. Teresia swept Linley with his slitted gaze, then said calmly, "Since you've sworn an oath, I naturally believe you." He swept his gaze past the interspatial rings belonging to Linley's 5 clones, and then, with a flicker, he suddenly disappeared from Linley's field of vision, his movements far faster than what a paragon-level expert like Linley was capable of. Is this a sovereign's speed? No wonder it is said that a paragon facing a sovereign isn't able to fight back at all. Linley felt secretly astonished. "Thank you, sovereign." Linley bowed towards the Blood-Ridge Sovereign in front of him, showing his gratitude. "Heh, the Blood-Ridge Sovereign let out a calm chuckle. "Linley, your 4 Divine Beasts clan resides within my Blood-Ridge continent, and Beirut is my emissary. The relationship between you and Beirut is not a shallow one. And you are in the right in this matter. Of course I should protect you. If you have some time in the future, you can pay a visit to my Blood Ridge Island. Blood Ridge Island is in the Cloudlink Mountains." "Yes, Sovereign," Linley said gratefully. "Are you planning to go kill Molda?" the Blood Ridge Sovereign said. "Yes." Linley nodded. This Molda tried to scheme against me. How can I spare him? It was Molda who had acquired an Overgod talisman. Molda hadn't publicly announced that he had acquired it, and now, he was trying to use it to scheme against Linley, and even mentioned some Overgod decree. He was quite insidious. No need. You can head straight back to the Skirite Mountains. The Blood Ridge Sovereign said. Linley was stunned. What? The Sovereign was going to stop him? Based on Linley's understanding, sovereigns generally wouldn't interfere in battles between deities. Over the course of countless years, quite a large number of sovereigns' emissaries had perished. Given his current level of strength, Molda is no longer qualified to be my emissary. The Blood Ridge Sovereign laughed calmly. More importantly, it now seems as though Molda lied to me and deceived me. Humph. The Blood Ridge Sovereign's face sank. To deceive a sovereign, that was punishable by death. Within city of Luklov, close to the Skymount Mountains. Within a secluded courtyard. Everything has been prepared. All I need to do is wait for news of Linley's death. Molda sat there in the garden, quite anxious. Although he felt 90% certain that Linley would die, he was still worried. Worried that somehow Linley would be lucky enough to survive this tribulation, then come for revenge. Thus, he no longer dared to return to his estate, instead coming to the city. Killing was forbidden within the limits of a city. This was the rule the sovereigns had established. Even paragons wouldn't dare to violate it. Suddenly, a terrifyingly powerful aura suddenly appeared within the garden, and then an inky black energy began to gather, forming into a silver-haired man. Sovereign. Molda, seeing this, was terrified and instantly knelt down. This was a body formed from energy into the shape of the Blood Ridge Sovereign. The Blood Ridge Sovereign's own body was 10 million kilometers away, but through divine sense, he was still able to form an energy clone. The energy clones of a sovereign were more than enough to kill the vast majority of high gods. But of course, it wasn't enough to kill a high god paragon. This was the reason why that sovereign of wind, Teresia, had to make his true body hasten to Linley's location. You dared to deceive me. The Blood Ridge Sovereign gave Molda a calm look. Swish. A dark, red, illusory arrow suddenly shot out from the energy clone's forehead. No, Molda, seeing the situation, wanted to say something, but the dark red arrow shot into his body, and then his eyes grew dim. He fell, never to rise again. Clang. The sovereign artifact, that armor, fell out. The energy clone picked up the sovereign armor, then transformed into a ray of light, leaving the city. Yes, it was forbidden to fight in cities. But that was a rule made by the sovereigns. Sovereigns weren't prevented from killing people. A black, sword-shaped metallic lifeform was flying at high speed within Indigo Prefecture. Boss, just now, I was worried to death. BB began to laugh. Right, boss, what did the sovereign want you for? Linley, hearing this, couldn't help but think of those 9 soul pearls. There was no sovereign nearby right now. With a thought, Linley sent his divine sense into the interspatial ring, in search of those 9 soul pearls. Within that lifeless region, a faint green aura surrounded the crown, which was adorned with 9 soul pearls. The 9 soul pearls, that tattered crown. Linley was completely stupefied. Book 20, The Crown's Riddle, Chapter 17, Too Hot to Handle. Within the metallic life form. Because of BB's words, Linley used his divine sense to investigate the 9 soul pearls within his interspatial ring. But what Linley saw was something he had never even imagined. Those 9 soul pearls had actually fused with that tattered crown. That crown was currently glowing with a faint aura that swirled around it. It was no longer broken and tattered looking. Seeing this, a look of astonishment appeared on Linley's face. Boss, what is it? BB, seeing this, couldn't help but ask. Nothing. Linley hurriedly reclaimed his equanimity and laughed, while at the same time he spoke spiritually with Bibi. Bibi, those 9 soul pearls are connected to something very important. That sovereign who came earlier came for the sake of those 9 soul pearls. From now onwards, no matter what, don't discuss those 9 soul pearls with anyone. Even after we return to the Skirite Mountains, don't discuss it. Bibi had endured countless trials by Linley's side. He knew a grave situation when he saw one, and he hurriedly spoke back through their spiritual bond, "Don't worry, boss. Olivier, Diana, Dea." Linley looked towards Oliver's group of 3, then said through divine sense, "From today onwards, you must completely forget about those 9 soul pearls. Understand? If you ever mention them, you will definitely cause a storm of blood. I will probably suffer for it, while you, as people with some inside knowledge, will probably be seized and questioned." Linley didn't even dare imagine how many people would suffer once they became connected to the 9 soul pearls. Aside from Molda, only Oliver's family of 3 and Bibi knew that Linley had acquired the 9 soul pearls. Once this news leaked out, Olivier, Bibi, and the other 2 would definitely be pursued. The 9 soul pearls. Olivier didn't ask anything further as he sent back, "Don't worry. We'll act as though we never saw anything. Don't worry, Uncle Linley." Dea said as well. Olivier and Diana were both high gods. They knew how important this matter was. Dea was an adult now as well, and as he saw it, for someone like Linley, an invincible paragon, to say such a thing meant that this definitely was a serious matter. Molda should be dead now, so as long as you don't tell anyone, in the future, there shouldn't be any major issues. Even if there are, at most it would involve me. Linley sent. He understood that although that sovereign of wind, Teresia, had departed, that didn't mean the other sovereigns wouldn't suspect anything. Linley frowned while pondering to himself. Molda most likely didn't just spread this news to just 1 or 2 sovereigns. It took me less than a year to go from the Skymount Prefecture to Indigo Prefecture. The Blood Ridge sovereign and that sovereign of wind were both fast, but most likely the other sovereigns haven't received this information yet. But shortly afterwards, they will learn it. They will come looking for me. As long as he had to deal with it by himself, it would be fine. He was a soul mutate high god with the power of will. Sovereigns wouldn't be able to hypnotize him. But Olivier, Dea, and the others, they were different. It was best to separate them from this matter early on. Skirite Mountains. Linley's residence. Reynolds was seated on the ground. He was lying against a tree, holding a book in his hands, while Yale and George were seated facing each other. Third bro is too studious when it comes to training. As soon as he returned, he immediately went into closed-door training. Not even his original body is resting. Given his current level, why is he training so frantically? Reynolds sat there on the ground, his gaze on his book while he mumbled aloud. His original body and his 4 divine clones, he should leave at least one of them to accompany his brothers in chatting. He can tell us about his journey, but he didn't even chat with us. He went straight into closed-door training. George shook his head, giving Reynolds, seated on the ground, a sideways glance. He laughed, "Fourth bro, can it be that you believe that if third bro was as lazy as you, he would have been able to reach his current level? No matter how talented you are, you still have to work hard." "I understand," Reynolds replied, and then he suddenly saw the distant Bibi. He hurriedly called out towards him, "Hey, Bibi, see me. I'm busy. I'll come later." Bibi quickly ran away. Bibi flew down the stairs, and as he did, the corridor grew cold and dark. Soon, Bibi arrived at a private room. Kriayak. The stone door was pushed open. Linley was there, seated in the meditative position within that stone room, his long hair hanging loosely. Linley opened his eyes and glanced at Bibi, then laughed and nodded. "Bibi, Sit. The stone door was shut. BB looked at Linley, puzzled. Boss, something you need. BB. Linley spoke to him through their spiritual link. Previously, you asked me about the 9 soul pearls, right? I'll tell you now, but our conversation must be through our spiritual link. This is because, I can't be sure if there is currently a sovereign using his divine sense to monitor me. Linley was unable to detect the divine sense of a sovereign, which was why, to be safe, Linley didn't dare to bring out the crown a single time. But of course, it is still early on. Most likely, most sovereigns don't know about this. Thus, the chance that we are currently being investigated is quite low. Nonetheless, to be safe, we need to be vigilant. After having experienced that last trial, Linley didn't want to rely on luck alone. It seems this is a serious problem. BB's eyes lit up as he sent back. It is indeed quite serious. Those 9 soul pearls are an Overgod talisman. That's something even sovereigns want. But, I can't hand it over, because once I hand over those 9 soul pearls, the sovereigns will definitely keep asking me for an Overgod decree. Handing them over would just cause a disaster. Right now, the most important thing is to hide those 9 soul pearls. Linley had pondered over this for a long time. Although he had quite a few good ideas, in the end, he chose one which required BB's help. Boss, tell me. BB sent back. Linley said aloud, BB, you need to eat divine sparks, right? This interspatial ring has more than enough within. As he spoke, he took out an interspatial ring and gave it to BB. While he said those things aloud, he simultaneously said mentally through divine sense, BB, the Overgod talisman is inside this ring. I can't open it up. What you need to do is to swallow the ring. You should now be able to make Godspark weapons, right? Hide this ring inside of a Godspark weapon and fuse it into it. I trust you are able to do this. Don't worry, boss. I am currently making a Godspark artifact. BB was completely confident. When BB had just become a high god, he wasn't able to forge Godspark weapons. But it had been more than 1,000 years. After having eaten so many divine sparks, BB already had the power to forge Godspark weapons. In a bit, I'll swallow this ring into my stomach, but I won't digest it. I'll cover it with a Godspark weapon. Heh, a Godspark weapon, even sovereigns aren't able to see through them and see what is inside them. Even if a sovereign comes to investigate us, how would the sovereign end up suspecting my Godspark weapons? BB was completely confident. Even if he wanted to search, he would probably search me first. Linley sent back with a faint smile. Items like Overgod talismans, to deities, were quite dangerous. Because of the trick Molda had played, Linley didn't dare to hand over the 9 soul pearls at all. If he didn't hand it over, it wouldn't be so bad. Most likely, the sovereigns would believe that Molda was trying to harm Linley. But if he handed them over, it would be strange if the sovereigns didn't then demand Linley hand over the Overgod decree as well. If Linley handed over the tattered crown, the sovereigns probably would go mad and most likely suspect Linley to be in possession of all 3 items. By then, Linley would be at the heart of a vortex of battles between sovereigns. If they aren't able to find it on me, the sovereigns will probably give up. Unless a sovereign was absolutely certain that the Overgod talisman exists, only then would they frantically search for it. Linley was very confident, because based on the information, he could tell, that the sovereigns didn't know whether or not the news about the Overgod talismans was true or not. Perhaps the Overgods hadn't even issued a mission. Linley's predictions were correct. This matter wasn't finished. Molda was dead, but the 100 soldiers he had sent out didn't know that. They still hastened to places throughout the Infernal Realm. The Starmist Sea was fairly close to the Blood-Ridge continent. Starmist Sea. Deep within the sea. A 9-storied tower. The farther down one went, the more space it took up. This 9-storied tower that was located deep within the Starmist Sea took up 100 kilometers, and was nearly 5,000 meters high. The 9-storied tower was completely, pitch black, but the outside layer was faintly glowing with light, keeping the water of the sea at bay. Within the 9-storied tower, at the main gates, 2 horned warriors were there, standing guard. Within the tower, the first floor, within the eastern hall. At the front of the hall, there was a throne glowing with illusory light. The figure atop the throne seemed so blurry, but the awe-inspiring, heart-shaking aura which manifested from this man caused a violet-robed man at the back of hall to kneel in terror, not even daring to raise his head. Sovereign. The violet-robed man knelt down before the throne. Your subordinate just received this news. And then I rushed over here, not even daring to look back. Sovereign. The violet-robed man knelt there on the floor of the hall. Your subordinate received some news. There is word regarding an Overgod talisman. Overgod talisman. A deep, hoarse voice echoed forth. Instantly, that black piece of paper flew towards the figure seated upon the throne, pausing momentarily before the throne. And then, the piece of paper began to burn before transforming into ashes. It was actually an ordinary piece of paper that contained this news. Laughable. The hoarse voice rang out. Where did you hear this news from? Sovereign, a high god delivered it to us. When I saw it, I immediately found that high god and began to interrogate him. At first, the high god insisted that he gained it by accident and wanted to offer it to me. But I didn't believe it and intensified the questioning. In the end, I learned that this news came from Lord Prefect Molda of Skymount Prefecture, of the Blood Ridge continent. He was the one who sent this person here. I didn't dare to ponder this, and instead immediately came to report it to you. A Lord Prefect of the Blood Ridge Prefecture. The sovereign, seated on his throne, pondered silently for a moment. You did very well. All right, then, you can leave now. Yes, sovereign. After hearing the words, you did very well, the violet-robed man's eyes flashed with delight as he immediately left. This news didn't come on an Overgod decree. The chances that this is real is rather low, but for the Lord Prefect to dare act in such a way, perhaps, there really might be a chance. That blurry figure immediately vanished, disappearing from the throne. The bloody sunlight shone down upon the Skirite Mountains. The carvings of the 4 divine beasts clan within the Skirite Mountains all appeared so eye-catching. There were people visible everywhere throughout the mountains. Whoosh! A blurry human figure suddenly appeared before the Skirite Mountains, seeming to have just teleported here. This man was dressed in a dark violet robe, which had stars embroidered atop of it. His long, deep violet hair hung loosely to his shoulders. His features were almost devilishly handsome, but there was a very fine, small horn in his forehead. This new arrival swept the Skirite Mountains with his gaze, then revealed a hint of a smile. Those 4 divine beasts died. I didn't imagine that their progeny would produce a paragon. And then, with another movement, he once more disappeared. In the air above Linley's estate, that dark violet-robed man once more appeared out of nowhere. Who is this? Reynolds, upon seeing someone suddenly appear out of nowhere in the air above him, was badly startled. The guards surrounding this empty space were all stunned as well. Before they even noticed it, someone had appeared above them. In addition, there had been quite a few people staring into the skies. The person seemed to have teleported here, as he had appeared immediately. Who is this? Yale sent mentally, stunned. I can't see him clearly. He seems to be completely wrapped in a layer of fog. I can't tell either. BB also mumbled, astonished. This figure descended, landing on the ground. He calmly released his aura, making it so that everyone nearby did not dare to approach him. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 figures charged out from the main hall. Greetings, Sovereign. The two figures simultaneously bowed. Linley, Beirut, the newcomer glanced at him with his violet pupils. Let's chat inside the room. As he spoke, his body flickered, then vanished from that location. His speed was countless times faster than that of a high god paragon. Linley and Beirut exchanged a glance. Linley, your predictions were quite accurate. Beirut sent with a laugh. It was easy to understand. Only, I didn't imagine that someone would come so fast. Linley sent with a sigh. Lord Beirut, which sovereign is this? The Starmist sovereign. He's the one who controls the Starmist Sea. In terms of power, amongst the 7 sovereigns of destruction, he is only weaker than the chief sovereign of destruction. He is far more powerful than that sovereign of wind who came last time. Come, let's go inside. Beirut sent, and then Linley and Beirut immediately stepped into the main hall. Book 20, The Crown's Riddle, Chapter 18, Joke. Within the main hall, all the outsiders had departed. The Starmist sovereign was seated on his throne, and his dark, violet gaze landed upon Linley. Linley, based on what I know, you have acquired an Overgod talisman, the 9 soul pearls, as well as the Overgod decree which describes these 3 items. The Overgod talisman and Overgod decree are useless to you. You had best hand them over directly to me. Of course, I will not make you hand them over for nothing. Forgive me, Sovereign. Linley bowed as he spoke. I do not possess the Overgod talisman or the Overgod decree. Rumble. A gloomy, cold, black aura that didn't contain a hint of light wafted out from the Starmist sovereign's body. It instantly filled the entire main hall. Linley only felt his body grow cold, and his legs were even turning soft. He felt like he had back then, when he was an infant and seeing the black dragon, a magical beast of the 9th rank, for the first time. The difference between deities and sovereigns was simply too vast. Sovereign. The nearby Beirut said hurriedly. Can it be that you are unaware that a sovereign of wind and the blood-rich sovereign have already sought Linley? Linley has already sworn an oath by the Overgod of fate, and the blood-rich sovereign himself testified that this was nothing more than a trap intended to harm Linley. Boson and the others came as well. The Starmist sovereign's gaze fell upon Beirut. Yes, Sovereign. Beirut hurriedly explained. This news was transmitted by the Lord Prefect of Skymount Prefecture, Molda. Just prior to this, Linley killed his most powerful divine clone. Molda was unable to take revenge, and so he came up with this idea. Otherwise, how could there be such a coincidence, that right after Linley killed his most powerful divine clone, he would immediately receive information about this Overgod talisman? Molda, the Starmist sovereign, knew that this information did indeed come from someone named Molda. Does he want to die? That low voice contained a hint of anger. Molda probably wanted to take revenge against Linley, even if it cost him his own life. Beirut said hurriedly. After losing his most powerful divine clone, Molda was no longer worth anything. But Linley is a high god paragon. The difference between the two is simply too great. For Molda to be willing to trade his crippled life for Linley's life, it makes sense. Where is Molda? The Starmist sovereign said coldly. He has already been executed by the blood-rich sovereign. Beirut explained. Both the sovereign of wind, Lord Terracia, and the blood-rich sovereign were angered by this. Linley wanted to go pursue and kill Molda, but Molda was the emissary of the blood-rich sovereign, after all. In the end, it was the blood-rich sovereign who personally killed him. The Starmist sovereign was silent, and he stared at Linley. Linley felt tremendous pressure from this sovereign's gaze. Suddenly, the Starmist sovereign frowned as he looked towards the main hall's door. A blurry figure suddenly took shape, transforming into the appearance of the blood-rich sovereign. Boson, you came. The Starmist sovereign said. The blood-rich sovereign smiled, then bowed slightly. Laughing while walking over, he said, "Of course I came. You came to my territory, how could I not come to accompany you? Shinji Senyi." It seems as though the Overgod talisman truly is quite alluring. Previously, Teresia also chased after Linley and wanted to force Linley to hand it over. Linley had no other choice but to swear an oath by the Overgods. And then, the Blood-Ridge Sovereign sat down as well. The Blood-Ridge Sovereign laughed as he looked at Linley and Beirut. "Don't worry. The Starmist Sovereign isn't like that madman, Teresia." Enough. The Starmist Sovereign couldn't help but glance sideways at the Blood-Ridge Sovereign. "Since Linley has already sworn by the Overgods, and with you bearing witness on his behalf, I trust what you have said. But Bosan, your emissary, Molda, actually dared to falsely generate news like this? There are only waves when the wind blows. I imagine that the Overgods might have truly issued a mission." The Blood-Ridge Sovereign nodded. "It makes sense. But if there really was such a mission, we have to at least see one of the 3 Overgod talismans, right? The most important thing is the Overgod Decree." The Overgod Decree described the requirements of the mission, but the information on the decree was clearly altered. This is because even if there is an Overgod mission, there is no way the Overgod Decree would have information on who is carrying one of the talismans. The Starmist Sovereign nodded. Suddenly, rumble, the Starmist Sovereign's terrifying divine sense suddenly swept out. "Shinji, why did you use your divine sense to cover the entire Infernal Realm?" The Blood-Ridge Sovereign said, surprised. Hearing this, Linley felt his heart shudder. Cover the entire Infernal Realm? The distance one's divine sense could reach was related to the strength of one's soul and the power of one's will. Linley was only able to stretch to 8 million kilometers or so, and that was because his spiritual energy was especially strong. But sovereigns, they were able to cover the entire Infernal Realm. One could imagine how much stronger the will of sovereigns was, compared to his own will. No wonder once a sovereign came in person to deal with a paragon, that paragon would have to die. Unless, of course, the paragon had already fled and avoided encountering the sovereign, instead fleeing into a material plane. Naturally, we have to discuss this matter with the other sovereigns of the Infernal Realm. Otherwise, every 10 years or every few centuries, another one of them will arrive. And we don't know for sure whether or not this news is real or not. The Starmist Sovereign said calmly. Linley's heart lurched. A discussion with every single sovereign of the Infernal Realm. The distant Redbud continent. The eastern Jade Float continent, the vast chaotic sea. The sovereigns, scattered across the distant lands, were now all connected through divine sense. "Shinji, why have you reached out to everyone?" Deep in the distant chaotic sea, an incredibly powerful presence spoke, with the voice echoing in the minds of every single sovereign present. "Chief, I have reached out to everyone because news has spread within the Infernal Realm regarding Overgod talismans. Soon, you will all learn of this, which is why I thought it best to reach out to you all directly to discuss this." The Starmist Sovereign's voice echoed in the minds of the other sovereigns as well. Sovereigns were capable of covering the entire plane with their divine sense. There was no need for them to gather together to converse at all. Overgod talisman. A cry of surprise and delight. This voice came from the sovereign of the Muja continent. The Overgods have issued another mission. What is the mission? Multiple voices echoed out in succession. But of course, only sovereigns were able to hear this. Even Linley and the others weren't able to hear it. Humph. This news originated from that emissary of Bosan's. The sovereign of wind, Teresia, spoke out. The 4 higher planes, including the Infernal Realm, were all far larger than the other divine planes, which was why many other sovereigns lived here as well. The Infernal Realm wasn't restricted to just the sovereigns of destruction. For example, there might be 1 or 2 sovereigns of wind, earth, or fire living here. And thus, the sovereigns currently engaging in this discussion included those of other elements as well. Everyone. The blood-rich sovereign immediately spoke out. I am very sorry. This news truly did originate from an emissary under my control, Molda. Based on my investigations, he wanted to gain revenge after his most powerful divine clone was killed by a paragon, and so he came up with this lie. Teresia and I have already looked into this. This indeed is nothing more than a joke. Who is the paragon? A clear voice echoed in each sovereign's mind. His name is Linley, the paragon of the four divine beasts clan. Teresia's voice rang out. Linley. A soft, graceful voice rang out. This voice originated from the powerful figure who resided within the Amethyst Mountains. Linley and I have a bit of a connection to each other. He has only been training for a few thousand years, but he is indeed a genius. He has already reached the level of paragon. Paragon. He became a paragon after just a few thousand years? Impossible. I also am aware of someone named Linley who has become a paragon. I was watching during the final battle of the Planar Wars. He defeated Magnus. But, I had no idea that he had been training for just a few thousand years. One voice after another rang out from locations spread throughout the vast Infernal Realm. The sovereigns chatted amongst themselves, all of them quite stunned. After all, even most of the sovereigns had yet to become paragons. Most sovereigns were powerful life forms that were formed by the natural world shortly after the universe was created. The reason they were able to become sovereigns was a matter of luck and power. It had almost nothing to do with whether or not they were able to become paragons. In their hearts, quite a few sovereigns felt admiration for those who were able to become paragons. After all, becoming a paragon was completely related with one's abilities, while becoming a sovereign was more a matter of luck and fortune. Linley just returned a short time ago from the Planar Wars. Perhaps he had a grudge against that person named Molda, and so he killed Molda's most powerful divine clone. Molda didn't have the power to get revenge, and so he came up with this idea. This was the Redbud Sovereign's judgment. Linley spent only a few thousand years to become a paragon, and the Overgod talismans are useless to him. I imagine that he wouldn't be so stupid as to try and hide the Overgod talismans. True. The blood-rich sovereign's voice rang out. Linley, before Teresia, swore an oath. Teresia, am I right? Teresia's voice didn't immediately ring out in response. Only after some time did he reply, yes. Linley swore an oath by the Overgods that before I told him about this, he knew nothing at all regarding the Overgod talismans. I need to tell you one more thing, everyone. The blood-rich sovereign concluded. This news came on a sheet of ordinary paper, not an Overgod decree. No Overgod decree? Why are we even discussing this? Without an Overgod decree present, even if an Overgod talisman was placed in front of us, we probably wouldn't be able to ascertain if it is an Overgod talisman or not. The natural world can give birth to some unique items as well. Quite a few sovereigns chatted about this, clearly believing this to be nothing more than a joke. Teresia's voice rang out. But this piece of paper did describe 3 items. Only the descriptions on an Overgod decree can be truly believed. Teresia, what, just based on your power, you want to get involved as well? Even if an Overgod truly issues a mission, given your strength, I imagine if you get involved, the end result will simply be that you will fall. A deep voice echoed forth from the powerful figure located in the distant Carol continent. Teresia fell silent. This was because the sovereign who said that was far more powerful than him. That Molda, he truly was daring. This voice came from the chaotic sea. However, for him to dare make such a claim means that while it may be true that he wanted to get revenge against Linley, even at the cost of his life, he might truly have received some information and might truly have seen the Overgod decree. Forget it. For now, let's not pay attention to this matter. Only when the Overgod decree appears in the world will there be proof that the Overgods have truly issued a mission. The chief sovereign of destruction's words were effective. As soon as his words came out, the other sovereigns no longer said anything. Within the main hall of Linley's estate, Linley just stood there to one side quietly. He knew that the sovereigns were currently engaging in a conversation through divine sense. They are scattered throughout the Infernal Realm, and yet able to instantly chat amongst each other with divine sense. Truly terrifying. Linley sighed to himself. Suddenly, the Starmist sovereign rose to his feet, and Linley hurriedly turned his attention towards him. The Starmist sovereign glanced sideways at Linley, a rare hint of a smile on his face. You become a paragon after just a few thousand years? Linley, this is utterly inconceivable. Excellent, excellent. After speaking, the Starmist sovereign disappeared. Only now did Linley let out a sigh of relief. How did he know that I became a paragon after a few thousand years? Linley was puzzled. Very few people, even amongst the four Divine Beasts clan, knew how long he had been training for. Only a few people he was on particularly good terms with, such as Rice Gem, knew this. Haha, a paragon after only a few thousand years. The Blood Ridge sovereign laughed as he looked at Linley. This news came from the Redbud sovereign. Linley, I imagine that within a short period of time, the sovereigns of the various major planes will all know this. All right, this affair of yours is now concluded. You don't have to worry about more sovereigns coming to search for you. Thank you, sovereign. Linley bowed as he spoke gratefully. Linley knew that the Blood Ridge sovereign was clearly standing on his side, and had most likely spoken out on his behalf as the other sovereigns had discussed this. Without this sovereign helping out, most likely, other sovereigns would have come to make trouble for him long ago. You can leave for now. There's something I wish to discuss with Beirut. The Blood Ridge sovereign said. Yes. Linley immediately retreated, leaving behind only Beirut and the Blood Ridge sovereign in the main hall. Book 20, The Crown's Riddle, Chapter 19, Parchment. Linley walked out of the main hall, then walked past the corridor to arrive at the empty grassy area. He took a deep breath, feeling the gentle wind blow against him. A smile appeared on Linley's face, as though he had been released of a heavy burden. Molda actually struck such a blow at me before dying. It really did cause endless problems. However, now that the various sovereigns have discussed it, this matter should come to an end. Unless that third talisman appears, or the Overgod decree appears. Boss. Bibi ran over, surprised and delighted. Father. Taylor, Sasha, and the others all walked over from far away as well. Linley looked at his family and friends. No matter what, the Overgod talisman is something which will attract the interest of sovereigns. Because of the news Molda spread, the sovereigns have all come to make trouble for me. But they shouldn't be so shameless as to go pressure my family. Since ancient days to the present days, there had never been, as far as Linley was aware of, a case of a sovereign going to go apply pressure to the family members of a deity. Boss, everything fine. Bibi walked before Linley. Bibi, look at third bro's face. You should know just looking at him. Yale laughed. Where is my grandpa Beirut? He's in the main hall by himself. Bibi said, confused. He's discussing something secret with the Blood Ridge sovereign. Linley said. Bibi and Yale were all shocked. Bibi said, the Blood Ridge sovereign came as well. Nobody else had seen the Blood Ridge sovereign arrive, because the Blood Ridge sovereign had directly created an energy clone within the main hall. Thus, the people outside had no idea. Your grandpa Beirut is coming. Linley laughed as he spoke to Bibi. Beirut was currently walking out of the main hall, a smile on his face. After coming out, Beirut locked his gaze upon Linley, then walked over. Grandpa. Bibi went to welcome him. Beirut laughed as he rubbed Bibi's head, then looked at Linley. Laughing, he said, "Everything is resolved, Linley. I have some business to attend to. I'll leave now." After speaking, Beirut then actually spoke to Linley through divine sense. "Linley, remember. Regardless of whether or not you acquired those 9 soul pearls, do not admit it. If you acquired it, make sure you hide it safely." Beirut's divine sense caused Linley to be badly startled. "Lord Beirut?" Linley sent back in surprise. Linley felt gratitude towards Beirut, and also viewed Beirut as he would an elder member of his own family. Beirut had that smile on his face, but his mental message was solemn. "Don't worry about anything else. If you didn't acquire it, that's fine, but if you did, you have to hide it. Don't admit it, even if someone threatens to kill you. As long as you do that, you'll be fine." After sending his message, Beirut chortled as he said a few words to everyone, then left on his own. Linley watched as Beirut left, the puzzlement in his heart becoming all the stronger. What did Lord Beirut intend by these words? He shouldn't know that I have the Overgod talisman, but his words, Linley didn't understand. Time flowed on. In the blink of an eye, a century passed. In the past 100 years, Linley had used his divine water clone to relax and accompany his family members, while his other 3 divine clones, along with his original body, focused painstakingly on their training. He had long since begun to train in the 6th profound mystery in the elemental laws of fire, but unfortunately, this 6th profound mystery was the most mysterious, most powerful explosion profound mystery. Linley's training speed was thus exceedingly slow. The profound mysteries of explosion, they were like the explosion of a volcano. A large amount of power would be collected, then instantly released. Its power was tremendous. For example, Blue Fire was able to move about as though he were teleporting, and his soul attacks and material attacks could be described as supreme. This had to do with the profound mysteries of explosion. Although profound mysteries were easily described, once one advanced deeper into them and tried to completely master them, they would become incredibly difficult to understand. His training in the elemental laws of fire was slow. But the path of fusing the laws of the 4 elements was even slower. The profound mysteries of circular softness of the laws of water and the throbbing pulse of the world of the laws of the earth were fused, but Linley's speed dropped drastically after that. He wasn't able to make any advances at all. Whoosh! The wind howled. Snowflakes covered the skies. The Skirite mountains seemed to be dressed in a layer of silver finery, appearing so dreamlike and beautiful. The number of patrolling guards around the 4 Divine Beasts clan had dropped dramatically as well. This was because they now had a paragon guarding them. Who would dare come make trouble for them? Naturally, there was no need to have so many guards standing about on alert. The Skirite Mountains. Dragon Avenue. A few sparse gatherings of guards could still be seen here. A metallic life form, shaped like an enormous hammer, was flying over from far away. It came to a halt outside the perimeter of the Skirite Mountains and the domain of the 4 Divine Beasts clan, then vanished, revealing a tall, large figure. This person was 2.5 meters tall. He was dressed in long black trousers, while his upper body was covered with nothing more than a tunic, revealing his muscular arms. His red hair was only an inch in length, but appeared as hard as nails. Who is it? One squad of the guards of the Azure Dragon clan flew over. The muscular man laughed and said, "Go inform your elder Linley that his old friend, Mosi, has come." This voice was very soft, and was quite comfortable to listen to. It didn't appear the slightest bit brash or uncouth. Those guards all looked at each other. An old friend of Elder Linley's. They, too, could tell that this newcomer had a remarkable aura. "Please wait a moment. I will go make the report," one of the guards said, then immediately turned and flew towards the Skirite Mountains. "Who is Mosi? Have you heard of him? By the looks of it, he should be a powerful expert. A friend of Elder Linley's, he should be a commander or a lord prefect level expert. Those guards all secretly chatted through divine sense regarding this big fellow in front of them. There had been countless experts who had come to visit Linley in recent years, and these guards all knew that none of these guests were people the likes of them could offend. Thus, the guards were all quite well behaved to those who came to see Linley. A long time later. Ha ha, Mosi. Laughter rang out as two figures flew over from far away. Mosi took a close look, then laughed as well. Linley, long time no see. The two were Linley and that earlier patrol guard. Linley, upon learning that Mosi had come, hurriedly went in person to welcome him. Laughing, he said, "Long time no see indeed. Mr. Mosi, come, let's chat inside." Mosi immediately advanced with Linley, shoulder to shoulder, through Dragon Avenue. Together, they flew deeper into the mountains. "It has been 2,000 years since we met, but I never would have imagined that you, who had been only a god, would have become a paragon." Upon hearing this news, I didn't dare believe it. Mosi chortled. Only after this was verified to me by my sovereign did I believe it. "I truly admire you." Mosi was an extremely powerful purgatory commander of the Infernal Realm. Linley had only learned some time later, from Beirut's materials, how powerful Mosi was. Mosi himself trained in the Edicts of Destruction and the Edicts of Death. In addition, he had reached an exceedingly, terrifyingly powerful level in both these edicts. As far as the Edicts of Death went, Mosi himself was very nearly at the very peak of perfection, just a tiny step away from becoming a paragon. Mosi was able to easily mentally dominate 7 star fiends. The number of people capable of doing this in the Infernal Realm could be counted on one hand. Even if Linley truly did become a paragon in the laws of the earth, he wouldn't be able to accomplish this. After all, each law had its own specialties. Experts of the Edicts of Death were skilled in the soul. As for destruction, because Mosi was of the Blood Rune Titan lineage, he was innately gifted in destruction. In the past, Mosi had used a hammer to effortlessly defeat and send feeling Lomio, someone who was very nearly at the Azura level. And that was with Mosi not having used his supreme technique. He was very nearly at the peak of perfection in both material and spiritual attacks. It could be said that aside from paragons, Mosi was invincible. No wonder, in the past, the Blood Rune Titan clan was able to effortlessly set up Malugo Island and develop it into a city which none dared to cause trouble for. What could you do? How could any ordinary Lord Prefects be a match for Mosi? I only managed to make my breakthrough due to luck, and it nearly cost me my life. Linley said with a calm laugh. I, too, dream of becoming a paragon. But this last step, there's nothing I can do about it. Mosi shook his head and laughed. While laughing and chatting, the two entered Linley's residence. Because Mosi wasn't too familiar with the others, Linley gave a simple introduction of the more important members of the residence, then led Mosi into the living room. Mosi and Linley began to chat privately. Mosi was a very smooth speaker, and as they chatted and laughed, he made Linley's opinion of him grow. "Linley, after having chatted with you for so long, I almost forgot about the reason why I came here today," Mosi said with a smile. "Oh? What is it?" Linley said, surprised. He had thought Mosi had come to reminisce with him. But now, it seemed, there was a special reason for the trip. "Look at this." Mosi waved his hand, and a sheet of black paper appeared. "This was sent to me by a high god warrior." Upon seeing this news, I immediately had a bad feeling. I felt as though someone is trying to harm you, which is why I dominated that high god. Only then did I learn that this was all arranged by Molda. Linley's eyes lit up. "This is the paper which Molda sent to be delivered." Linley hurriedly accepted it. Linley wanted very much to learn what this piece of paper described. Back then, he had asked Beirut, but unfortunately, Beirut didn't have a copy of it either. Molda had only sent his subordinates to the other 6 regions. As for the Blood Ridge continent, he didn't give it to any other lord prefects or commanders. The information on this paper is clearly meant to kill you. That is why I immediately hurried over to deliver it. Mosi said solemnly. It would have taken quite some time for that high god warrior to travel from the Blood Ridge continent to Maluo Island, and then more time for Mosi to hurry over. One could understand why so much time had passed. Linley carefully read through the information on this paper. 3 talismans, the 9 soul pearls, the Pentametal Crown, and the red caltrip diamond. These 3 Overgod talismans will join together into the Crown of Life. Linley's eyes lit up. Once these 3 talismans fuse together and the Crown of Life forms, one can then offer it to the Overgod of Life and make a request of the Overgod of Life. That was the most important bit of information included on the paper. At the same time, it also included descriptions of these 3 Overgod talismans. So that tattered crown was the so-called Pentametal Crown? 3 talismans, I already have 2 of them. Linley rejoiced in his heart. Now, I only lack for one thing. The red caltrip diamond. The red caltrip diamond was a blood red, caltrip-shaped diamond. As for what special power it had, this piece of paper didn't say. This piece of paper also said that the Overgod decree, which had information about these 3 talismans, as well as the 9 soul pearls, the first of the Overgod talismans, were in the hands of Linley, of the 4 Divine Beasts clan of the Indigo Prefecture. I've never seen the Overgod decree. Linley mused to himself. But of the 3 talismans, I already have 2 of them. If I were to acquire the 3rd, then I would be able to make a request of the Overgod of Life. Make a request of the Overgod of Life. Linley couldn't help but mumble to himself. Suddenly. Bang. A light suddenly flashed in Linley's mind, and his eyes lit up. Mosi, by Linley's side, couldn't help but laugh at Linley's shock. I know a little bit regarding the Overgod missions. Over the course of countless years, the Overgods have issued several missions. I also seem to recollect that each time a sovereign succeeded, the sovereign requested an Overgod artifact, which the Overgods agreed to provide. The Overgods would satisfy any request. The Overgod of Life is the manifestation of the edicts of life, which control the lives and destinies of the countless living creatures of the universe. The sovereigns aren't able to save Grandpa Douring, but it is very possible that the Overgod of Life is. Linley still clearly remembered what the chief sovereign of death had said to him. Once a person's soul is scattered and dispersed, sovereigns would be unable to rescue them. Overgods? Although she wasn't sure, the Overgods, being the personifications of the edicts, were simply too powerful. Perhaps they would be able to. Grandpa Douring, countless scenes flashed past Linley's mind. On that day, a white-bearded, white-haired old man had flown out from his ring. On that day, that bearded old man had guided him, a youth, into the straight chisel school of sculpting, allowing the youth to rise dramatically in power. On that day, the bearded old man had given up his own life to execute a forbidden level spell. Grandpa Douring, Linley, who had reached the very peak of power, felt his heart trembling. As long as I am able to find the 3 talismans, I can make a request of the Overgod of Life. Now, I only lack for one thing. Just one thing. Grandpa Douring, I will definitely bring you back to life. Definitely. Linley's heart was aflame. His hopes were blazing. Book 20, The Crown's Riddle, Chapter 20, After a Millennium, An Astonishing Change. Many years ago, the Blood Ridge sovereign had executed Molda in the city of Luklov, within the Skymount prefecture. That disturbance had naturally drawn the attention of the governor of Luklov city, as well as many high gods. But the Blood Ridge sovereign had only ordered the city governor to pay no attention to the matter. In addition, the Blood Ridge sovereign had completely disintegrated Molda's body. Given that the sovereign had issued an order, naturally, no one in Luklov city dared to get any further involved in this matter. And so, this matter came to an end. Molda had been afraid that Linley would pursue and kill him, which was why he had privately snuck out and hidden himself within Luklov city. He had rented an estate there. Even after he had died, the soldiers of Skymount Prefecture naturally still believed that he was still perfectly fine and alive. Skymount Prefecture. Molda's former estate. Many soldiers were stationed here. The blood sun hung high in the sky. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning flashed through the skies, then halted in the air above the Lord Prefect's manor, transforming into a human figure. This person stood there in midair, his waist ramrod straight. Although he was a bit thin, a dominating aura wafted out from him. His head was covered with long black hair which casually undulated in the breeze, falling all the way to his waist. On his back was a single warblade. This person was the expert Linley had met in the Starmist Sea, Lomio. In the past, Lomio had had the terrifying power of a near Azura level expert. This is the Lord Prefect's residence. Hurry and depart. A large number of prefectural soldiers flew over, with the leader shouting angrily towards Lomio. Lomio actively spread out his aura, remaining in the air above the Lord Prefect's estate. He was clearly acting in a provocative manner. Lomio swept the people beneath him with his gaze, then said calmly, "From today onwards, I, Lomio Bornazen, am the Lord Prefect of Skymount Prefecture." His voice echoed out like thunder, reverberating in the skies. The hundreds of thousands of soldiers stationed nearby, as well as some tribes located farther away, all heard his words clearly. Impudence! An emaciated old man dressed in a black robe barked out in anger. The Lord Prefect of our Skymount Prefecture is Lord Molda. If you wish to be the Lord Prefect, then you must follow the rules. First become a 7-star fiend, then issue the challenge. The prefectural soldiers below were all angered as well. Could a person become a Lord Prefect just because he said he was? To simply appear above the Lord Prefect's residence and declare oneself the Lord Prefect? This was utterly laughable. Rumble. A thick, black, terrifying surge of energy descended from the heavens, causing the prefectural soldiers below to be astonished. One of the soldiers in particular, that emaciated elder dressed in black robes, stared with a changed look on his face. So much sovereign power. And then, the sovereign power that filled the heavens coalesced into an enormous face that was tens of meters high. Whoosh! The terrifying presence of a sovereign. Sovereign. All of the prefectural soldiers landed on the ground, kneeling and trembling. Sovereign. Lomio landed on the ground and knelt as well. The previous Lord Prefect of Skymount Prefecture, Molda, committed a capital offense and has been executed. From today onwards, the Lord Prefect of Skymount Prefecture shall be this Lomio who stands before you. A voice like thunder which rang in every person's ears and mind. The aura and presence of the sovereign pressed down on the terrified prefectural soldiers, and not a single one of them dared to raise their heads. And then, that giant face, tens of meters high, suddenly vanished. The world once more returned to normal. Only now did the prefectural soldiers dare to raise their heads. Upon seeing that the sovereign had departed, they rose to their feet. "We pay our respects to you, Lord Prefect." The more nimble-minded of them hurriedly fell to one knee, paying their respects to Lomio. "We pay our respect to you, Lord Prefect." Instantly, the hundreds of thousands of other soldiers also fell down to one knee and called out in unison. Lomio's sharp, cold gaze swept across all of them, but a hint of a smile came unbidden to his face. After so many years of painstaking training, he had finally become a Lord Prefect. He was now one of the 108 Azuras of the Infernal Realm. However, Lomio had been assigned to this position by the Sovereign. He hadn't acquired it through the usual way of defeating the previous Lord Prefect, then assuming the position. Thus, quite naturally, many people weren't convinced of Lomio's power. One could imagine how, in the future, quite a few 7-star fiends would come challenge him. Come, then. The more, the merrier. Lomio's eyes were shining. The Infernal Realm. The Caral continent. A black, dragon-shaped metallic lifeform was flying above it. The Lord Prefect actually died. Didn't that make our trip pointless? Within the metallic lifeform, there were 15 high gods gathered together. The ones who had gone to send the information to the Starmist Sea had made the trip in a fairly short period of time, but not a single group of the high god soldiers who had been sent to the Caral continent had arrived yet. Actually, of the 100 high gods, during the past century, only 40 or so had successfully delivered the news. The others, especially those assigned to more distant locations, naturally weren't able to make it in time. Only after Lomio had arrived and then released the 100 divine clones of that were held hostage within the prefectural manor did these soldiers realize that Molda was dead. Molda's dead. There's no reward for us, even if we deliver the message. Brothers, let's go. Time to go home. We traveled for a century, but it was all for nothing. These soldiers clearly seemed quite disgruntled. Hey, how about we sell this news off? This information is still fairly important. If we sell it to the intelligence agents of the Fiend Castles, we will still receive a high price for it. Molda's dead anyhow. He's unable to kill us for leaking out this information. Right. This news is definitely valuable. This news even mentions Lord Linley. As I see it, Molda intended to harm Lord Linley. These soldiers didn't believe this news to be real. Soon, those soldiers who had made a trip for nothing and who would never receive Molda's promised reward came to a decision. They would sell off this astonishing information to the Fiend Castles. The Fiend Castles had many different departments: escort, assassination, treasure hunting, and of course, they also bought intelligence reports and information. After the Fiend Castles purchased this information, those soldiers who no longer feared Molda's reprisals also informed the Fiend Castles that it was Molda who had instructed them to deliver this news to the various Lord Prefects and Sovereigns' emissaries. After acquiring this information, the Fiend Castles would naturally sell it off at a high price to the interested experts. Naturally, this news was quickly made known to the other experts of the Infernal Realm. The vast majority of experts believed that Molda was trying to harm Linley. But there were a few who believed it, and so they filled the lands in search of the 3 talismans, so as to be able to offer them to the sovereigns and thus be rewarded. Of course, this news also quickly made its way to the ears of the sovereigns as well. But after the previous conference, the sovereigns no longer paid much heed to this. And yet, at the same time, the sovereigns were rather irritated. How could this sort of information be spread all over the place in such a manner? The sovereigns instantly gave the order for the Fiend Castles to no longer sell this information. And yet, since this information had already been publicized, the order of the sovereigns came too late to do any good. This didn't have any impact on Linley. Linley's life was still as tranquil and peaceful as ever. However, the many descendants Linley had brought over from the Yulon Plain, after having spent centuries in the Infernal Realm, were beginning to grow restless. The Infernal Realm had too many experts. Most of the descendants of the Barak clan were merely saints. After the ancestral baptism, they became demigods. In the Infernal Realm, the only thing they could do was be abused. By relying on the power of the 4 Divine Beasts clan, the descendants of the Barak clan from the Yulon continent were able to wander around a few of the cities of the Infernal Realm. However, they found life to be boring, and many still decided to return to the Yulon continent. Linley didn't stop them, and by relying on the sovereign's insignia, he was able to send a group of them back. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed since Mosi had delivered him that information. 1,000 years, to deities, wasn't much. During these 1,000 years, Linley had advanced quite a bit in his 4 laws. He had managed to begin fusing the throbbing pulse of the world and the dimensional attack profound mysteries of the laws of the wind. In fact, he was halfway through fusing them. He had also begun to fuse the dimensional attack mystery and the circular softness mystery of the water. Only, he had yet to completely master either of these two fusions. As for fire, his training speed in fire truly was slow, and the more he trained, the slower it went. He had spent 1,000 years after mastering the first 5 profound mysteries of the laws of fire, and had spent that entire time training in the profound mysteries of explosion, and yet still hadn't mastered it. The Skirite Mountains. Linley's estate. Beneath a thick, gnarled, twisted willow tree that was within a courtyard. This green willow tree had been living for more than 800 years, and its myriad branches drooped down and danced about, appearing so beautiful. Yale, although you became a deity through fusing with the divine spark, don't give up. Perhaps someone who fused with the divine spark also has a chance of fusing profound mysteries. Look at me. I don't have any confidence in my ability to fuse profound mysteries, and yet, BB, still ended up fusing 2 of them, right? Haha. BB's loud laughter could be heard coming from below the willow tree. Beneath the willow tree, there was a black wooden table, with 3 people around it. These 3 were BB, Yale, and Wharton. I don't have such extravagant hopes. Yale chortled. Look at me. I'm a high god now. Although I reached this level through fusing with divine sparks, the difference between where I am at now and where I was at back at the Ernst Institute is as great as the difference between the heavens and the earth. What's more, I've already reformed the Dawson conglomerate, and we have a huge pile of descendants. I'm satisfied. Haha, the only thing left for me now is to enjoy life. I'll occasionally go to some material planes and undergo a few simple adventures. I'm just a high god who fused with divine sparks, but in the material planes, I have nothing to fear. And, I even have the sovereign's might which Third Bro gave me. After becoming a deity, he had gone back to the Yulan continent and lived there for over 2 centuries. During the course of those 2 centuries, Yale had sired 19 sons and daughters. By relying on the power of the Barak Empire, he had effortlessly reconstructed the Dawson conglomerate. His 19 sons and daughter had carried on his work, and the Dawson conglomerate once more flourished. And then, bored, Yale had taken his 3rd wife with him and returned to the Infernal Realm. But of course, that time, Yale had been quite unlucky, while holding the Sovereign's medallion. He had to go from the Yulan continent to the Infernal Realm, then back, 8 times in a row before arriving at the Blood Ridge continent. Teleportation was free for holders of the Sovereign's medallion, after all. Yale, BB, I wonder how long it will be before I, too, will go to some other material planes for a stroll. Wharton laughed while musing to himself. Beirut had given Linley a Sovereign's medallion, but hadn't taken it back. Since Linley didn't use it, he let BB and Waitan often borrow it. Why the rush? Next time, we'll let the boss take us all together. BB said. Just as they were chatting. Rumble, a surge of rippling power, born from the natural laws, descended. The location was somewhere within Linley's estate. BB, Wharton, and Yale all immediately rose to their feet. That's coming from the place where Third Bro is training, Yale said hurriedly. Haha, the boss made a breakthrough. The boss divine fire clone has finally reached mastery as well. BB called out in celebration. It was exactly as BB had said. Linley's divine fire clone had, indeed, made a breakthrough. Red light was currently bathing the entire room. The long, brown-haired Linley was currently seated in the meditative position, but next to him floated a Linley with long, fiery red hair. A black gemstone, covered with fiery red light, was floating above this Linley's head. It was his divine fire spark. Dense amounts of fire-type elemental essences swirled around the divine spark, carrying within them the laws of the natural world. Moments later. Finally. Success. Linley, seated in the meditative position, opened his eyes. His divine fire clone entered his body. My divine fire clone really was far slower than the other clones in training. Fortunately, since my divine fire clone was able to share energy from my other 4 souls, it slowly transformed as well, making my training speed much faster. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have broken through and mastered a 6th profound mystery this quickly. Linley rose to his feet, his face wreathed in smiles. By using 3 types of divine power, my strength is comparable to when I use sovereign power. Then with 4 types. Linley was finally able to begin testing out the feeling of using 4 fused types of divine power. His heart was filled with eagerness. His face all smiles. Linley fused his power, and upon doing so, his face froze. Crackle, a bizarre sound rang out from Linley's body, and all the muscles of his body turned taut. His azure golden draconic scales suddenly emerged, and spikes appeared on his forehead and his spine. That metallic, whip-like draconic tail trembled and emerged as well, and a terrifying energy roiled about Linley's entire body. This is utterly unbelievable. Linley's eyes were filled with astonishment. Book 20, The Crown's Riddle, Chapter 21, 4 Divine Powers Fuse. Savage pain racked Linley's entire body. It felt as though countless little bugs were gnawing away at him. That bone-deep pain was so great that even someone like Linley wasn't able to endure it expressionlessly. All he could do was to grit his teeth and struggle to endure it. At the same time, Linley's divine sense filled each part of his body. Pure darkness, which didn't contain a hint of anything else. A dark flood swirled about throughout Linley's body. There was no rhythm or order to it. The large tide of black energy filled every single muscle. Every single blood vessel, every single bone. Those specks of black energy seemed to have found their home as they sank into his bones, muscles, and organs, causing every single part of Linley's body to undergo a heaven-shaking transformation. Rumble. All of his bones were trembling to the point of emitting clattering sounds. The fusion of 4 types of profound power actually results in this pure black color. This black divine power is actually this much more powerful than sovereign power. Linley hadn't expected this either. Prior to this, for Linley, using the fusion of 3 types of divine power had been comparable to using sovereign power. But for example, although it was comparable to when Linley used destruction-type sovereign power, it was still significantly weaker than when Linley used earth-type sovereign power. As Linley saw it, the 4-way fusion would result in a 10-fold increase in power, making it so that it would only be a few times stronger than when he used earth-type sovereign power. But now that he had actually fused 4 types of divine power, a remarkable, unique transformation had occurred. Amazingly, it had transformed into this pure black color, and Linley could clearly sense how powerful this black energy was. Despite the passage of countless years, no person had ever possessed 4 divine bodies and still successfully undergone a soul mutation. Linley had succeeded, and thus he was able to fuse 4 types of divine power. Earth, fire, water, wind. The fusion of these 4 types of divine power gave birth to this black divine power. And it was so powerful as to make Linley tremble. Suddenly, the azure golden scales covering Linley's body began to be covered with fine lines of black energy. Even his spikes were being covered. The black lines crisscrossed his draconic scales, his spikes, his draconic tail, and even dug deep into his body. Anyone looking at Linley would feel as though Linley's entire body was covered with a large amount of black runes. Rumble. The draconic scales on Linley's body were shuddering. Because the frequency of the shuddering was very high, they emitted a rumbling sound, causing even spatial ripples to occur. How could this black divine power have such a bizarre effect? Although his entire body was racked with pain, Linley, having trained to the peak of power, was able to maintain complete clarity of thought. He could clearly sense that every part of his entire body was transforming. His muscles were strengthening at an astonishing rate, and his bones were rising in hardness repeatedly. This terrifying rate of advancement caused even Linley to be terrified. According to legend, the ancestor of my Azure Dragon clan, the Azure Dragon, was able to use sovereign power to strengthen his body, to the point where it was comparable to a sovereign artifact. Most likely, this was because water-type sovereign power and his own water-type divine beast body was a perfect match. As for the fusion of these four types of divine power, they too are strengthening my body. This sort of strengthening feels similar to when one uses divine power to nurture a divine artifact. Linley knew a few simple ways by which one could strengthen one's body. The fundamental underpinning of strengthening one's body was simply to allow one's body to constantly absorb energy and constantly grow strong. But although this was easy to describe, the amount of energy needed was tremendous. How could one completely absorb it? This was difficult. This was partially related to innate abilities. For example, divine beasts like God Ader rats and Azure dragons all had their own ways to strengthen their bodies. Clearly, this fusion of four types of divine power also had the special effect of strengthening one's body. When cultivating a divine artifact, what one actually did was to constantly absorb divine power into the artifact, slowly making it harder and sharper. At the same time, one would infuse it with some spiritual energy, so as to slowly give it sentience. Linley sent his divine sense into his body. He discovered that beneath his skin, a special change was beginning to occur. The same was true for his draconic scales. It seems as though this strengthening process should take a fairly long period of time. Linley understood that actually, this strengthening process could be completely guided by the strength of his spiritual energy. If, however, he allowed the fused divine power to strengthen his body as it pleased, what would the results be? Father made his breakthrough. Why hasn't he emerged yet? Taylor stared at the distant end of the corridor. Generally speaking, after making a breakthrough, Linley would emerge from his study and walk into the wide, grassy expanse outside. If he were to do so, he would have to pass through this corridor. At this moment, aside from Taylor, others such as Beebe, Reynolds, and Yale were also paying attention to this corridor. Even Delia, along with her daughter Sasha, was staring at the corridor while chatting. Mother, can it be that Father's breakthrough was not in relation to his divine fire clone? Sasha said softly. It should be his fire clone. Your father's other 3 divine clones reached the high god level long ago. Delia frowned as well. But after making a breakthrough, he should come out. Right at this moment. Delia. A clear voice echoed in Delia's mind. Linley, how are you doing? Delia, surprised and delighted, conversed with him through divine sense. I have indeed made a breakthrough, but right now, I am in the process of gaining some insights into strengthening my body and am currently analyzing them. Thus, for now, I won't come out. Don't worry about it. As to this breakthrough, it can last anywhere from 1 year to a few decades, or even a century. Linley was worried that his friends and family would be concerned, and so sent a message out through divine sense. All right. Focus on your training. Delia was actually quite happy. After all, Linley hadn't made many improvements in the past 1,000 years. Delia laughed as she looked at everyone present. Enough, everyone. All of you, hurry up and take care of your own affairs. Linley is still training. He's still in the midst of training. BB mumbled. I was hoping that third bro would come out and go on a stroll with us. Yale stretched lazily, then sat back down, resting his legs atop the table and speaking in a casual manner. Do you think third bro is as lazy and bored as you? Reynolds mocked. But enough of them for now. Linley, in his room, was completely absorbed in the process of his entire body being strengthened. In addition, through his powerful spiritual energy, he was able to guide the process and direction of this strengthening. On the very first day, Linley's body strengthened to a ridiculous amount, but as time went on, the strengthening speed slowed as well. Still, Although it slowed, that was just in comparison to the first day. In reality, each day, Linley's body was growing stronger. If others knew how much his body was strengthening by, most likely they would stare with blank gazes. Nearly 10 years silently, soundless passed. During this period of time, Linley's focus never wavered. He continued to focus on guiding and controlling the strengthening process, and as he did, he discovered better ways for strengthening himself. Slowly, as he tested more method, he managed to develop a body strengthening method that was suitable for fused divine power and suited for his body. In the mortal world, there were all sorts of battle chi manuals. But in the world of deities, deities only focused on analyzing the fundamental underpinnings, the elemental laws and the natural edicts. Those so-called manuals, to them, were nothing more than jokes. For example, Linley could come up with any sort of battle chi manual he wanted. Everyone understood this. Even when it came to strengthening the body, there was no such thing as a secret manual. There were only techniques that were suited to oneself. Only personalized, customized techniques were the best. Different bodies and lineages, different types of energy, they all had matching, effective training methods. The method that was effective for the Azure Dragon wouldn't necessarily be effective for Linley. After all, the energy within Linley's body was this black divine power, formed from 4 different types of fused divine power, which had never before been seen since the creation of the universe. I've more or less mastered this process. Linley stood up. At this moment in time, Linley's body was covered with a layer of inky green scales. Actually, given the strengthening process of the black divine power, Linley's draconic scales should be black in color. However, Linley's original draconic scales were azure golden, and so, after this transformation, they had become this inky green color. Linley's draconic scales had become even denser and even more tightly clustered together. If one drew close to Linley, one would discover that atop Linley's draconic scales, there was an exceedingly thin membrane of translucent muscles. These muscles were created by the flesh beneath Linley's skin, after Linley's draconic scales had been strengthened by his black divine power. However, the muscles were so thin as to be translucent. If one was slightly farther away, one wouldn't be able to notice them at all. As for the spikes covering Linley's forehead, spine, elbows, and knees, they could be said to have undergone the most dramatic changes. This was because these spikes, incomparably sharp and hard to begin with, after the strengthening process, had become completely black. In addition, they had slightly shrunk just a little bit in size. Linley's draconic claws, previously, his fingernails had been both long and sharp. They were retracted now. In dragon form, Linley's hands were now completely black, and his fingernails just appeared a bit sharp. That was it. The results of this strengthening process made it appear so that, from the outside, the savagery of the dragon form had been somewhat reduced. However, although the appearance was reduced in savagery, the power had increased greatly. The power of his body, compared to before, was much more than 100 times or even 1,000 times stronger. However, the greatest increase in power was still this. Smiling, Linley stretched out his right hand. Out of nowhere, a black longsword suddenly appeared. This was his Godspark weapon. Mirage. Divine power could be used to nurture a divine artifact. According to legend, sovereign artifacts were thus formed by sovereigns nurturing an artifact with sovereign power. But of course, the creation of a sovereign artifact also required a sovereign to infuse it with his will, which was why they reached such terrifying levels of power. As for this Godspark weapon, Mirage, it was made from incredibly powerful materials to begin with. Most likely, even most sovereign artifacts, in terms of material quality, were inferior to this Godspark weapon. Over the past 10 years, Mirage had been constantly nurtured by that black divine power, and it had constantly transformed as well. However, the amount of time needed for a divine artifact to be nurtured was very long. Mirage has yet to reach its limit. However, even now, I imagine Mirage isn't the slightest bit weaker than any sovereign weapon. Linley had seen sovereign artifacts before, which was why he was able to make this judgment. Forget about Mirage, Linley felt that even his dragon-formed body should be close to sovereign artifacts in power. I truly didn't imagine that a four-way fusion of divine power would have this sort of effect. Linley willed his draconic scales to disappear into his body, and then formed a set of inky jade robes out of energy. Actually, after this strengthening process, Linley's skin and muscles alone were now far stronger than the draconic scales had been in the past, to say nothing of his current dragon form. So four types of divine power, when fused, has this sort of effect. It makes sense, our ancestor, the Azure Dragon, was able to do this. It is only normal that I am also able to strengthen my body. Linley stretched out his right hand. With but a thought. Whoosh! His hand transformed into a blade, and with a blade chop, Linley casually swiped his arm forward in accordance with the principles of the dimensional decapitator. Rumble, an enormous tear in space occurred. After this strengthening process, the power of my body has risen to a terrifying level. Even if I use simple profound mysteries, the power of my attacks is tremendous. Linley finally was able to sense Beirut's advantage for himself. His base power was simply too formidable. Even without needing to use too many profound mysteries, he was still powerful enough to be invincible. Smiling, Linley pushed open the door to the hall. Within Linley's estate. Linley walked out of the corridor, then stared towards the empty earth outside. Only 10 or so figures were there. Wharton, who was chatting casually with others, accidentally noticed Linley from the corner of his eyes. He immediately called out in surprised delight, "Big bro." At the same time, he hurriedly ran over. Wharton's call attracted the attention of many people, and they all immediately ran over to watch, while at the same time engage in an excited chorus of shouts and cries. This caused the people in other rooms or even outside to be attracted over as well. Linley. Delia, delighted, walked over. Haha, there should now be no further need for all 5 of my divine clones to remain in training. Linley laughed calmly. This strengthening process didn't just impact Linley's original body. Even his other 4 divine clones had been strengthened. Actually, although his other 4 divine clones were unable to dragon form, their bodies were still incredibly powerful now. Delia's eyes couldn't help but light up. If Linley didn't stay in meditation, that meant he would have time to accompany her. "Third bro, I wanted to go out for a stroll for some time now. We've been waiting for you." Yale chortled as he hugged his wife. "Right. But boss, you've always been training." BB teased intentionally as well. Linley began to laugh. "Haha, fine, then I'll accompany you all on a stroll. However, to tell the truth, there are many places in the Infernal Realm that I haven't been to. The Infernal Realm has quite a few unique places, you know. Let's go, let's wander throughout the entire Infernal Realm, and then go visit the material planes, one by one." After having reached the pinnacle of power for deities, Linley was no longer under any pressure. He was more than happy to accompany his family in wandering the Infernal Realm and the various material planes. Book 20, The Crown's Riddle, Chapter 22, Real and Fake. Linley, BB, Reynolds, Yale, and their relatives had joined into a squad of nearly 20 people. Linley's group thus began their wanderings over the Infernal Realm. They went to the mysterious depths of Lake Punassee. They went to Fire Crow Mountain, of the Takake Mountains. They occasionally made a detour to visit some purgatory commanders or lord prefects of the Infernal Realm. However, the Infernal Realm was simply too vast. Despite having journeyed for dozens of years, Linley's group had only managed to travel from the western part of the Blood Ridge continent to the eastern part. The eastern part of the Blood Ridge continent. Within the Fogmount Prefecture. Fogmount City. The streets were teeming with people. Linley's group strolled forward while looking about. Bibi's wife, Nissa, made a suggestion. We've come to adventure in the Infernal Realms, but to be honest, the places with the most unique items are the Black Sand Castles. Let's go pay a visit to the local Black Sand Castle. There definitely will be countless queer items within it. Women love to shop. Black Sand Castle is essentially a black market. It holds more items than the Blood Ridge Castle does. Linley, let's go take a look. Delia's eyes lit up as well. Bibi nodded hurriedly. Let's go straight to the Black Sand Castle, boss, what do you say? Laughing, Linley nodded, then led them towards the Black Sand Castle. The Black Sand Castles scattered throughout the Infernal Realm were all identical. They appeared to be made from flowing black sand. Although the surface of every single Black Sand Castle was covered with flowing black sand, the castles themselves had remained erect for countless years. Linley's group casually intermingled into the crowds and entered the Black Sand Castle. The counters of Black Sand Castle were clearly teeming with more people than that of the Blood Ridge Castle. There are quite a few little trinkets. The females all quite happily began to stroll about while purchasing some small trinket. The items on this floor are all ordinary merchandise items. Let's go higher up. The more precious items will be there. Linley advised. The first floor of the Black Sand Castle contained items that were worth 10,000 inkstones or less. The items on the second floor were worth 1,000,000 inkstones or less. As for the third floor, the items there were worth more than 1,000,000 inkstones. And this was just a general range. Still, Black Sand Castles were most famous for their fourth floors. The items on the fourth floor were truly rare curios. Some were valuable, others weren't. The precious items of the Redbud Castles and Blood Ridge Castles were all real items, and thus the prices were clear as well. But Black Sand Castle was a black market, after all. First of all, the prices would thus be lower than places like the Blood Ridge Castles. And yet, many of the sellers of Black Sand Castle were all private sellers. Black Sand Castle made no guarantee regarding the authenticity of the items within. This was a matter for the buyer to determine. Linley's group finally arrived at the fourth floor. The countless curios of the fourth floor are divided into costly and cheap items. The most important thing is one's judgment. In addition, one can bargain. Nissa laughed while speaking. If you end up being tricked into buying a useless item for an astronomical price, all you can do is blame yourself. But if you have a good eye and are able to buy a precious item for a low cost, then you'll have made a fortune. Linley's interest was roused by Nissa's words. Come, let's take a look at what treasures are here. Linley laughed as he walked towards the nearest counter. Amusing. Linley looked at many of the items and their listed prices, then secretly laughed. Given Linley's spiritual energy, he was able to gauge the authenticity of these items with fairly good accuracy. Bibi followed behind Linley as well. Hey, boss, what sort of rock is this rock of yours? Bibi pointed at a black rock on the counter that was tinged with a hint of blood and which faintly emanated a fiery aura. Linley gave a glance at it. This stone's listed price was 5,000,000 inkstones, an astonishing price. The person responsible for this counter was a fairly skinny, white-haired elder who was wearing a felt cap. He gave Bibi a sideways glance with his faint blue eyes, then said coldly, "This stone is tinged with a hint of the blood of the fire-type divine beast, the vermilion bird of the legendary 4 divine beasts." Vermilion bird. Linley was startled, and then he laughed involuntarily. If this truly was the blood of the divine beast vermilion bird, then even 500,000,000 inkstones would be a low price for it, to say nothing of 5,000,000. In addition, Linley had noticed that although the aura emanating from this stone was strong, there was no way it could compare to that drop of azure dragon blood essence he had acquired in the past. The vermilion bird and the azure dragon were both divine beasts. The aura of their blood should be at the same level. Vermilion bird? Don't you know that the vermilion bird was a sovereign? BB pursed his lips. Forget about divine beast sovereigns, even a drop of blood from ordinary sovereigns would contain ridiculous levels of power. This rock of yours was probably stained by the blood of an ordinary fire-type divine beast. BB himself was a divine beast, and so naturally he could speak authoritatively on this subject. The old man gave BB a sidelong glance, then said calmly, "The blood long since seeped deep into the stone. Thus, the aura it is emanating is very weak. If you don't want to believe it, there's nothing I can do. I'm not begging you to buy it." The old man was putting on airs. A weaker person might truly be hoodwinked by him. "Let's go." Linley and BB continued onwards to other counters. "Boss, there really are real and fake items here." BB sighed in amazement while looking at the other items. "Right." Suddenly, Linley's face changed. He saw an item located atop one of the counters, and his gaze focused on it intensely. This was a caltrop-shaped red gem, and it was quite eye-catching to behold. A red caltrop diamond. One of the three major talismans, the red caltrop diamond. Linley was shocked. He felt his head grow dizzy and he looked at it carefully. Of the three Overgod talismans, Linley had already acquired the Pentametal Crown and the 9 soul pearls, he now only lacked the red caltrop diamond. "Good sir, are you interested in this red caltrop diamond?" The young, bald, silver-eyed caretaker of this counter laughed while speaking. "I am interested." Linley saw the price right away, 1,000,000,000 inkstones. 1,000,000,000 inkstones. You really dare to list a price like this? BB, seeing this, let out a cry of surprise. A decent estate within a city was only 1,000,000,000 inkstones or so. BB weighed the bald, silver-eyed youth appraisingly, then snickered, "Tell me, what sort of treasure is this, that you value it at 1,000,000,000 inkstones?" Linley had seen the black parchment, but BB had not. Thus, BB didn't know about the red caltrop diamond. The bald, silver-haired youth let out a low laugh. "The two of you, have you heard of the Overgod missions? One of them was to collect 3 talismans, which are the Pentametal Crown, 9 soul pearls, and this red caltrop diamond. Although I dare not say that this is definitely the legendary red caltrop diamond, but look, this diamond definitely wasn't man-made. There is a chance that it is the legendary Overgod talisman. If it truly is a red caltrop diamond, why wouldn't you offer it to the sovereigns?" BB pursed his lips. Linley laughed while looking at the youth as well. "I'm just an ordinary high god. By what right would I ask for an audience with the sovereign? In addition, I'm not certain as to whether or not it is real either." The bald, silver-eyed youth said. "If I was certain of it, how could the price be merely 1,000,000,000 inkstones? It must be understood that drops of sovereigns might start it at 100 trillion inkstones. An Overgod talisman, by contrast, would definitely be worth an astronomical sum. No amount of inkstones would be worth more than an Overgod talisman. Perhaps this red caltrop diamond of yours truly wasn't forged by human hands." Linley said. "Of course." The silver-eyed youth said. "Would you dare allow me to try and give your red caltrop diamond a squeeze? If it doesn't break, I will buy it. If it breaks, I won't pay." Linley pursed his lips, glancing at the silver-eyed youth. Given how powerful Linley's spiritual energy was, he was able to see through to the corner of the red caltrop diamond long ago, and found that within it, there was a hint of fire-type elemental energy. The Overgod of life had issued 3 talismans. Linley was in possession of 2 of them. The Pentametal Crown carried a surge of energy that was able to heal his wounds. The 9 soul pearls were able to protect the soul. They were all life-aligned. Thus, this red caltrop diamond before him was definitely fake. More importantly, Linley held the Pentametal Crown, and so he knew the size of the caltrop-shaped setting. Just based on the size of the setting alone, Linley was completely certain that although the caltrop being sold on the counter was quite similar, It was different, it was slightly larger. There was nothing for it. Lord Prefect Molda of Skymount Prefecture had never seen the red caltrip diamond himself either. He had only seen its appearance on the Overgod decree, and thus had drawn it out. It made sense that the size wouldn't be an exact match. No way. The silver-eyed youth let out a snort. If you want to buy it, then buy it. If you don't, then forget it. The two of you, stop looking at that red caltrip diamond. I have the Pentametal Crown here. A voice rang out from nearby. Hearing these words, Linley couldn't help but laugh involuntarily. He turned his head to look. You have the Pentametal Crown. Of course. You decide whether it is the real one or not. The speaker, a gold-haired youth, spoke with confidence. Linley glanced at it sideways, then he couldn't help but feel astonished. This Pentametal Crown was actually identical to his own Pentametal Crown, even the settings were completely identical. In fact, even the coloration of the Pentametal Crown was identical. As Linley looked at it, he felt as though he were looking at his own crown. It must be understood that the scroll only had a picture of the talismans, and so there were some differences between the picture and the real thing. There was no way the colorations could be the same as the real item's colorations. This one is fake. Linley laughed calmly. Borbuletin stop trying to cheat people. The seller of the red caltrip diamond, that silver-eyed youth, snickered. This person is clearly an expert. He clearly is quite insightful. The silver-haired youth snorted. A few years ago, when your elder brother was here, he boasted to me about how he had once acquired the Pentametal Crown. I asked him where it had gone, and he said that while he was heading on a trip to sell some items, he was waylaid by bandits and lost his divine clone. He said that the Pentametal Crown was in his interspatial ring, which was shattered. And thus, the Pentametal Crown was lost. The silver-eyed youth snickered. I'm willing to boast as well. I can say that I acquired a talisman, then lost it. Who told you to believe it? The golden-haired youth snickered back. Linley, hearing this, had a sudden thought. He laughed. I imagine this Pentametal Crown was made in accordance with the one your elder brother acquired, right? The golden-haired youth glanced at Linley in surprise, but didn't say anything. BB, let's go. Linley could tell from the look in the golden-haired youth's eyes that the youth's elder brother had indeed acquired the Pentametal Crown. Only someone who had previously acquired the Pentametal Crown would be able to replicate it with such accuracy. Only, he said that the interspatial ring was shattered. How could the Pentametal Crown then have emerged from chaotic space? Linley's heart trembled. Can it be, that after an interspatial ring is shattered, the items within the ring aren't actually lost, they just return to chaotic space once more? Linley mused to himself. Linley's guess was correct. Nothing would suddenly appear out of nowhere for no reason. And nothing would something disappear into nowhere. No matter where you were, once a spatial tier was created, anything that entered the tier would fall into chaotic space. If an interspatial ring was shattered, the contents of the shattered ring would also be swept into chaotic space. Only, virtually all items would be destroyed by the energy flows of chaotic space. Only a small minority of items would survive. For examples, Overgod talismans, the Overgod decree, sovereign artifacts, divine sparks, even if they were in a shattered interspatial ring, they would simply fall into and be lost in chaotic space, rather than truly disappear. If items in interspatial rings were truly disappear, then if an Overgod talisman was in an interspatial ring that was destroyed, didn't that mean that the Overgod mission would be uncompletable? Boss, there really are quite a few fake items here. BB mumbled. They are quite numerous. Still, the news about the Overgod missions have spread quite quickly. Even these merchants have begun to take advantage of it to make money. Linley laughed calmly. Linley had been planning to just casually stroll about, but after this latest experience, Linley had another thought. I need to do a thorough investigation in the Infernal Realm. Perhaps someone might have found the real red caltrip diamond, then sold it off as merchandise. Linley understood that given how many fake red caltrip diamonds there were, most likely even if a real red caltrip diamond were to appear, few would believe it. But Linley had two of the items at hand. He would be able to easily judge if the third was real or not. Book 20, The Crown's Riddle, Chapter 23, Red Caltrip Diamond. As Linley's group was leisurely romping its way through the Infernal Realm in a carefree manner. In the distant Muja continent. The Goodson Kadaseng Mountains. Night descended. A nameless, mysterious mountain cave within the Goodson Mountains. A sloppy-looking man with long, loose hair was seated in the meditative position. In the darkness of the cave, his terrifying, scarlet eyes could still be seen. Alat a logo te, I, Brody Buletin logo de, swear that one day, I will make you die. Make you die. A low growl emanated from the throat of this sloppy-looking man, filled with immeasurable anger. The sloppy-looking man's fists were clenched so hard that they shook. The sloppy-looking man swallowed his anger, then slammed a fist against the stony ground. Crack, a crack appeared in the ground. Although Brody's rage rose to the heavens, he was still cautious. He had set up a god realm long ago, making it so that the area within 10 meters of him was separated from the outside realm. Even if he shattered rocks and howled here, the outside world wouldn't hear a thing. That Alat was a high god. How will I take revenge? How will I be able to rescue Vidanika Waduo Nika? Brody's mind was in a state of chaos. In the past, he and his wife Vidanika had been curious about the Infernal Realm, and had entered it, filled with eagerness towards what the future held. In his material realm, Brody was without question a supreme expert, because he was a god. In addition, he had two god-level divine clones, and a saint-level original body. A god, in a material realm, could be said to be invincible. But once he led his demigod wife into the Infernal Realm, they were casually tossed aside by the Muja army's soldiers and thus landed in the Ladi tribe. Brody dreamed of struggling hard and training while earning some money, so as to go to the cities. After all, life in the tribes was filled with constant danger. Everything had progressed as he had planned. But who would have imagined that the leader of the Ladi tribe, Alat, had actually taken a fancy to Brody's wife, Vidanika, upon seeing her. Without saying anything, he had seized her. The two, husband and wife, had been together for countless years, and they had arrived together from a material plane. In Brody's heart, his wife was more important to him than life itself. Although he had heard that some powerful people would forcibly take away some weak women, Brody had never imagined this would happen to him. Actually, after one became a deity, appearances no longer mattered. Deities could change their appearances. But the nobility and aura that came from the soul was different for each person. Some female deities looked ordinary on the outside, but had a particular charisma or aura which would attract some experts. If these experts were reasonable, they might slowly woo them. But if the women were to encounter tyrannical, domineering experts, they would simply be taken away. That year, when Linley, Delia, and Bibi had arrived in the Infernal Realm, others had warned Linley to be careful. Only, Linley hadn't been as unlucky as Brody. What should I do? Whenever Brody thought about his wife had been taken away, he felt so agonized he could go mad. He had once thought up a way to bring his wife back and rescue her. But his plans, in the face of the tribal leader's power and forces, they were nothing more than a joke. Afterwards, Brody had risked his life before escaping. And that was only because the tribal leader, Alat, hadn't cared about him, a god. There is no moonlight today. Everything outside is dark. It is time to head out. Brody's plan was very simple. He would hurry to a city, then use the meager resources he had accumulated over the years to go take the fiend trials. Upon becoming a fiend, he, Brody, would roam the infernal realm and train himself at the edge between life and death. There will come the day when I become a true expert and once more return to the Lottie tribe. Brody said silently to himself, and then he suddenly moved, exiting the cave like a black shadow and entering the black night, beginning to advance at high speed. Training at the precipice between life and death, until the point at which he could defeat a lot. Brody himself knew that the chances of success were nearly zero. A lot was the leader of a tribe, after all. In terms of strength, he was most likely at the 5-star fiend or 6-star fiend level. Brody was a god. To want to one day be able to defeat a lot? The chances were too low. Brody executed the shadow shape technique, cleaving close to the ground as he constantly advanced. He didn't dare to make any noise at all, for fear of attracting attention from bandits. He was a god. In a material realm, he was an expert, but in the infernal realm, he was like a paper boat that would be overturned and annihilated by the smallest of waves. Suddenly, a red light seemed to flash past. Brody had been advancing at high speed, but he suddenly halted and frowned as he turned back to look. What was that? Brody felt his heart clench, and he couldn't help but draw closer to that faint red light which had just flashed past. There, hidden within the dry grass, a caltrop-shaped red diamond was lying on the ground. Upon seeing this red caltrop diamond, Brody felt as though his soul had been mesmerized by it. He couldn't help but reach out to grab it. Once the red caltrop diamond entered his hand, instantly, a unique energy instantly swept through Brody's entire body and soul. What a comfortable feeling. It seems as though this power can protect the soul. No matter how foolish Brody might be, he instantly understood that he had acquired a treasure just now. What sort of a treasure is this? Brody felt quite mystified. He had arrived in the infernal realm long ago, and had only stayed in this tribe. He hadn't even gone into any cities. How could a god like him know about the news regarding the Overgod talismans? And how could he know what the item in his hands was? The only people who knew this information were either Azura-level experts or information brokers like the Black Sand Castle merchants. My soul seems to have become powerful. Brody couldn't help but feel shocked. Just as Brody was feeling stunned by the red caltrop diamond, a figure suddenly flashed past through the skies, then came to a sudden halt. This was a muscular man whose face was covered with green scales. My luck isn't bad. I found some prey while on patrol. Bandit groups had patrols as well. Most of the patrolling guards had divine clones back at the headquarters. Upon finding any prey, their clones would immediately send news back to the headquarters. Kid, you grabbed that red diamond. Whatever for? A snicker rang out from above. The red diamond was quite clearly visible in the dark night. However, Brody was too stunned by the special effect of this red caltrop diamond. After all, he hadn't lived for too long in the infernal realm by himself, he simply wasn't cautious enough. He hadn't imagined that a wandering patrol would just so happen to arrive at this moment. Brody lifted his head, and his face changed. In the darkness, deities would still be able to see to a certain distance. Flee. Brody didn't hesitate at all, transforming into a blur as he fled at high speed. Too late. The patrolling warrior above snickered. He was in no hurry to go kill Brody alone, instead, he awaited his comrades. The other members of this lair of bandits, under the guidance of the muscular man's clone, was swarming on this position. Haha, kid, you came to our mountain. You think you can just leave whenever you want? Loud laughter rang out. Brody raised his head to look. You won't be able to leave. Brody turned his head to look. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 bandits had surrounded him. Brody's face turned ashen. Why? Why did it end up this way? Brody was in such pain that he wanted to howl in agony. He had just escaped the tribe, and his scheme of revenge had yet to even begin. And now, he had encountered bandits. I, I'm willing to join you. Brody said hurriedly. You are just a god. One more or one extra makes no difference. The leader laughed coldly. These dozens of bandits were led by a man in a violet robe, who was a high god. This bandit group numbered nearly 1,000 in total and had 3 high gods. They might be interested in a high god, but generally speaking, they couldn't be bothered about recruiting gods. Although they had quite a few people, for just a single one of the 3 leaders to lead some people over was enough to kill Brody. No, Brody wanted to say something. Brothers, kill him. The violet-robed figure gave the order calmly. Haha. Accept death. The bandits were completely confident. Each of them launched their soul attacks or material attacks against Brody. No. No, Brody bellowed in rage. His revenge was incomplete. He had yet to rescue his wife. He wasn't willing to just die here. In the Infernal Realm, the number of people like him, who were unwilling to die, who had revenge left unfinished, were beyond number. Bang. Boom. Tens of bandit attacks descended. Brody frantically dodged, but he was still struck by 5 material attacks and 3 soul attacks, which struck his body. He's dead for sure. The violet-robed man and the other experts all believed this. A high god would be able to endure it, but this was a god. Brody had a look of astonishment on his face. He had been shattered, but in that same instant his body had been shattered. It had quickly reformed at a speed that exceeded the shattering speed. As for the soul attacks, those 3 attacks only made his soul tremble slightly. The red caltrip diamond contained a unique energy which effortlessly deflected those soul attacks. This red caltrip diamond was located at the core of the crown of life. In terms of power, it was more powerful than the 9 soul pearls. As for the Pentametal Crown, it was the least useful of them all. When Linley had attacked Molda, those 9 soul pearls had allowed Molda to stay alive. How could ordinary bandits kill Brody? The bandits were all stupefied. Brody lowered his head, looking at the red caltrip diamond in his hands. When he had encountered this earlier crisis, he had thought that the red caltrip diamond had a particular power which was capable of protecting his soul, which was why he was gripping it. But the effects of the red caltrip diamond vastly exceeded his imagination. I didn't expect that this treasure would be so powerful. Brody's eyes instantly lit up. In fact, Brody now felt as though the entire world was filled with light and color. With this, I'll be able to get revenge. I definitely will. Brody was wildly overjoyed. What's going on? The violet-robed man frowned. All together, kill him. Yes. The bandits, hearing the command of their 3rd leader, immediately charged down and attacked Brody. Die. Brody held the red caltrip diamond in one hand and a short dagger in the other, wanting to kill the bandit ahead of him, so as to flee. You won't be able to flee. The bandits were completely confident as they launched their most powerful attacks. Brody completely ignored the enemy attacks, and his dagger split a bandit's head in twain. This kid's defense is so tough. The violet-robed man, watching this, frowned, then with a flicker, also joined the fray. Brody's speed was far inferior to this violet-robed man's. Scram! Brody forced back yet another bandit. He wanted to break out of and escape from this encirclement, but what he didn't realize was that a stream of violet light had already appeared in front of him. God! Too weak. The violet-robed man murmured to himself. At the same time, his violet glove-covered right hand gently smashed down on Brody's head. Smash! Only now, in the instant that he was struck, did Brody realize what had happened. Crackle, the violet-robed man's body actually began to tremble. The violet-robed man began to howl in agony. In but an instant, the violet-robed man collapsed, completely lifeless. A high god had died. What happened to the commander? The bandits were completely stupefied. This diamond, Brody felt wild joy in his heart. He himself knew very well what had happened. When the enemy had struck him on his head, the red caltrop diamond had instantly generated a bizarre, freezing pulse of energy that had wildly devoured the enemy's spiritual energy, instantly draining the enemy's soul dry and shattering it. This diamond harms enemies but not me. Brody tested using his spiritual energy to activate the red caltrop diamond, but as he thought, the surge of cold energy once more spread out. In addition, under Brody's guidance, it actually covered his black dagger. Haha, Brody seemed to have gone insane as he charged against the bandits. All the bandits who were so much as nicked by the dagger or who were touched by Brody's body all collapsed, quivered, then died. In but an instant, aside from 5 bandits who were so terrified that they immediately turned tail and fled, all of the bandits perished. With this diamond, why should I fear a lot? Brody was extremely agitated. He glanced at the distant mountain, then moved as fast as lightning, departing at high speed. Book 20, The Crown's Riddle, Chapter 24, Status. Ever since that trip to the Black Sand Castle, where Linley saw the fake red caltrop diamond and Pentametal Crown, he had an additional goal in his mind. While adventuring through the Infernal Realm, every few years, Linley would make a trip to the Fiend Castle while in a city and investigate the intelligence reports regarding the Overgod talismans. Each investigation cost him 10 million inkstones. This price seemed to be high, but generally speaking, only true experts would be interested in this sort of report, as well as a few powerful high god merchants. 10 million inkstones, to such powerful experts and such wealthy merchants, wasn't a very high price. Jade Float Continent. Cold Calm Prefecture. Good Hope City. Linley's group was wandering the streets of Good Hope City. Linley laughed as he glanced at Bibi. Bibi, Good Hope City is Nissa's old home. Supposedly, her elder brother, Salomon, resides here within Good Hope City, and is in charge of managing the entire city's administrative matters. Now that Nissa has taken you not to go see Salomon, why don't you go as well? Humph, Salomon? I can't be bothered to go visit him. Bibi said disdainfully. Are you still holding a grudge over what happened that year at the volcano range? Delia laughed with a wry twist to her lips. Salomon's behavior back then did, indeed, cause Linley, Delia, and Bibi to cease considering Salomon a friend. Not long after Bibi and Nissa had wed, however, Bibi had accompanied her to meet Salomon. Last time I went to see Salomon, it was because I was worried that Nissa would feel unhappy. Unless it is necessary, I can't be bothered to go see him. I look down on his sort of person. Bibi said. That Salomon is indeed unworthy of befriending. Yale spoke as well. Yale and Reynolds both knew of some things that had happened in the past. Let's go. The Fiend Castle is up ahead. Reynolds chuckled. Everyone knew that upon entering a city, Linley would generally insist on going to the Fiend Castle. The Fiend Castle was fairly empty, and even in the main hall on the first floor, there were few people present. Linley, in quite a familiar manner, headed straight to the stairway towards the third floor. Help me make an investigation into any news regarding the Overgod talismans. Linley walked to a nearby counter on the third floor, then handed over his fiend emblem. In the Fiend Castle, whether one wished to accept a mission or to engage in an investigation, one had to first be a fiend. An ordinary person, even a rich one, wouldn't be qualified. News regarding the Overgod talismans. The skinny elder with short black hair who stood behind the counter raised his head, glancing sideways at Linley, then snickered, 1-star fiend. Linley. You are a merchant. The short-haired elder had investigated and realized that Linley was a 1-star fiend. Naturally, he came to this conclusion. No need to concern yourself. Linley laughed calmly. Kid, making a fake Overgod talisman to swindle others won't be that easy. The short-haired elder snickered, then pulled out a scroll. This is the most up-to-date collection of information on the Overgod talismans in the entire Infernal Realm. The price to read it once is 10 million inkstones. Linley casually tossed out 10 fist-sized azaites. These large azaites were equivalent to 1,000,000 inkstones. When reading through this scroll, if you desire a scryer recording which pertains to something in the scroll, just tell me. The short-haired elder was quite lazy. He didn't even bring out the scryer recordings. Linley didn't mind, instead flipping through the scroll. The scroll was divided into sections pertaining to the Pentametal Crown, the 9 soul pearls, the red caltrip diamond, and the Overgod decree. They were arranged by date. Linley flipped directly to the section on the red caltrip diamond and began to read, starting from the latter sections. After all, he had read much of the earlier parts previously. While holding the red caltrip diamond, this person's wounds instantly healed. And there's a scryer recording. When holding the red caltrip diamond, this person was able to sense the edicts of fate and was able to immediately become a high god. There's a scryer recording proving this as well. Linley, seeing these reports, couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. There were many fake stories. For example, while holding a fake red caltrip diamond, one might swallow a pill concocted by an expert of the edicts of life, then allow others to attack oneself. At the same time one was being injured, the effects of the pill would activate, and one's wounds would naturally heal. From the scryer recording, however, it would appear as though it was being done by the fake red caltrip diamond. This one is interesting. While holding the red caltrip diamond, one would have an indestructible body. Only, there is no scryer recording. Linley glanced at the last one, then laughed. This report is really ridiculous. While holding the red caltrip diamond, not only does one have an indestructible body, but anyone who touches him will die. As Linley saw it, the crown of life should be a healing, curative item. After all, that was the type of energy held within the Pentametal Crown as well. The 9 soul pearls were also designed to save others. Linley thus came to the subconscious conclusion that the same was true for the red caltrip diamond. But he had forgotten. Experts of the edicts of life were able to save others, but also able to harm others. Since the crown of life was able to save others, of course it was able to harm others as well. Oh! And this doesn't even have a scryer recording. This comes from the Muja continent. A god who wielded this red caltrip diamond was able to kill a group of gods and a high god. There isn't even a scryer recording. Anyone can make this sort of story up, and there is no way to verify it. Not credible. Linley's gaze swept past it, then he continued to read the reports below. Only if Linley felt a report to be credible would he bother to see the scryer recordings. Hey, are you done yet? The short-haired elder said with a frown. Why are you rushing us? Yale, not too far away from Linley, couldn't help but snap back as he stared at the short-haired elder. I'm just asking you all to hurry up. The short-haired elder glanced sideways at Yale. Also, this is the Fiend Castle. Don't make a fuss here. The short-haired elder was a high god as well. Given that it was forbidden to fight within the castle, generally speaking, this elder didn't treat customers with a great deal of courtesy. Given that Linley was a one-star fiend, he would be all the more looked down upon. Don't be in a rush. Wait a while. Linley glanced calmly at the short-haired elder, then continued to leaf through the intelligence reports. Right at this moment, footsteps rang from upstairs, making their way down below. Oh, quite a few people have come to buy intelligence reports today. A gentle voice rang out from far away. Linley turned his head to glance at the speaker, and in total there were 3 figures walking over. The leader was a gold-haired, blue-eyed middle-aged man, who had 2 green-robed women following behind him. The short-haired elder behind the counter, upon seeing this person, was badly startled and hurriedly bowed. Governor. Sit. The gold-haired, blue-eyed man laughed calmly. Right. give me a report and scryer recordings regarding the various challenges to the Lord Prefects the Infernal Realm has recently seen. In the Infernal Realm, for 7-star fiends to challenge Lord Prefects was a commonplace event. Yes, Governor. The short-haired elder was very meek. The gold-haired, blue-eyed man glanced at BB, then frowned, somewhat puzzled. Then he walked to the counter and accepted the scroll that the short-haired elder handed him, along with the many scryer recording crystal balls that were now on the counter. At this moment, Linley and the governor were reading shoulder to shoulder. The gold-haired, blue-eyed man glanced at the nearby Linley out of the corner of his eyes. His face suddenly changed, and he cried out in surprise, "Are you Lord Linley?" "HRM." Linley turned to glance at him. "Who are you?" Linley didn't recognize this person at all. Governor, the short-haired, skinny elder, upon seeing the governor act so respectfully towards Linley, couldn't help but say hurriedly, "His name is Linley, but he is only a 1-star fiend." "Shut your mouth." The gold-haired middle-aged man gave an icy glance to the short-haired elder. 1-star fiend. A look of surprise flashed through the gold-haired man's eyes, then he looked at the fiend emblem in the short-haired elder's hands. "Siya Shaya, hurry up and go exchange that fiend emblem for a 7-star fiend emblem." The short-haired elder was shocked. A 1-star fiend had just become a 7-star fiend. Based on the rules of the Fiend Castle, one could only be promoted through taking on missions. How could it be changed by a whim? Governor, the green-robed woman behind him, Siya, couldn't help but feel puzzled. The governor of a city's fiend castle was exceedingly strong, true, and an individual at the 7-star fiend level. But that didn't mean he was qualified to directly hand out 7-star fiend emblems. Don't worry. If even the Paragon level expert, Lord Linley, isn't qualified to be a 7-star fiend, who in the Infernal Realm would be? The gold-haired man laughed. "Oh, you recognize me?" Linley gave him a surprised glance. The gold-haired man smiled. "Information regarding supreme experts such as paragons are under the personal control of the governors of the fiend castles. I even have detailed information regarding the events of the planar wars, and I even have scryer recordings of the several battles you engaged in, Lord Linley, before you became a paragon. More importantly, I myself participated in that planar war, and I saw you, Lord Linley." Linley was startled. But of course, a 7-star fiend like myself was nothing more than a captain in the armies. "Lord Linley, when you and Lord Magnus were engaging in that great battle, we were all watching. It is only normal for me to recognize you but for you not to recognize me, Lord Linley." The governor laughed. In the planar battlefield, he was nothing more than a simple soldier. Just now, when I first saw Lord BB, I was startled and felt he looked familiar, but I didn't react in time. I didn't even dare imagine that you, Lord Linley, would be here. But upon seeing you in person, Lord Linley, I came to my senses." The governor laughed while speaking. Linley couldn't help but chuckle as well. Intelligence reports were divided into levels. Although Overgod missions sounded important, and should be ranked as top-grade intelligence reports, in reality, there were simply too many fake reports, and so they would naturally be ranked lowly and be managed by ordinary high gods. Information regarding paragons or sovereigns, or regarding some ancient secrets, however, weren't purchasable with money alone. Paragon. The short-haired elder stared nervously at Linley. A 1-star fiend? Was actually one of the legendary, invincible paragons? Linley and the governor chatted for a while, then Linley took his fiend emblem and left. By now, however, he had a new 7-star fiend emblem. What a pity. There is too much fake information. A few sounded plausible, but they didn't even have scryer recordings. Linley left regretfully. After Brody had acquired the red caltrip diamond, given how completely destitute he was, he naturally had taken the interspatial rings of the bandits and their divine sparks as he left. After countless trials, Brody discovered that as his spiritual energy grew more powerful, the amount of that unique energy he could summon from the red caltrip diamond increased as well. Thus, Brody decided to fuse with a divine spark. He had 2 divine clones. In order to gain revenge, he was willing to allow one of them to fuse with a divine spark. Rising from god to high god, even through fusing with divine sparks, meant that the soul would skyrocket in power. The Muja continent. An ordinary tribe. The Ladi tribe. A lot, come out. This bellow echoed throughout the air above the Ladi tribe. The warriors of the Ladi tribe stared in surprise and terror at the fiendish, godlike figure who stood there in the air. That formerly weak Brody had become so powerful and terrifying upon his return. The corpses currently littering the ground were the results of the earlier battle against him. No one was able to touch Brody and survive. Brody, you became a high god so quickly. I imagine you fused with a divine spark. You didn't run far away, but instead dared to return. You really are looking for death. A figure suddenly floated up into the air above the castle. Dressed completely in black armor, this man's entire body, including face, was covered. Only a pair of golden yellow eyes could be seen. This was the number 1 expert of the Ladi tribe, the leader of the tribe, Alat. Bariman Bali man, let's continue our discussions on cooperating later. I'll go deal with this punk first. Alat lowered his head and smiled towards an old man with curly brown hair. Chief Alat, feel free to go take care of your internal matters. I'm in no rush. Old man Bariman laughed calmly. Alat was very confident, because he was a 6-star fiend level expert. As he saw it, although Brody was able to kill many warriors, the reason was primarily because he was a high god, and also because he had probably come up with some sort of unusual attack. But Alat didn't care about that, because as he saw it, the difference in power between them was too great. There were no tricks Brody could use. In battle, one had to rely on true ability. If he, a 6-star fiend, was unable to kill a high god who had just fused with a divine spark, that would be quite bizarre. My wife. Brody growled. Your wife. Alat laughed. Your wife is pretty obstinate. She'd rather die than submit. Still, I'm in no rush, I'll slowly train her. And now, I'll kill you first. Alat waved his hand, and a 2-meter-long blood-red giant sickle appeared. The 6-star fiend, Alat. The high god who had become one through usage of a divine spark, Brody. They stared at each other in midair. I should be able to see Alat's power in this battle. The old man with the curly brown hair looked at the 2 men above the castle, smiling while using the scryer technique to record this battle. Actually, not just him, many of the tribal experts who trained in the laws of water were all recording this battle. Feel honored to die beneath my supreme technique. Alat let out a calm laugh, and then his body flashed out in a red arc as that giant red sickle slashed down. Slash. A giant spatial rift appeared. For a 6-star fiend to be able to tear a hole in space represented that the strength of his attack power was fairly high amongst 6-star fiends. Brody just used his black dagger to block it. Clang. The black dagger was actually shattered. Too weak. Alat laughed disdainfully as the red sickle in his hands chopped towards Brody's skull. Crackle. As the red sickle chopped into Brody's skull, Alat suddenly felt his blow become powerless, because the damaged head was actually healing at a rate so rapid that the red sickle wasn't able to chop any further. What is going on? Alat was shocked. Die. Brody discarded the dagger in his hand, then stretched his hand out, snatching at Alat's sickle-wielding right hand. As their hands touched, Alat felt a terrifying powerful energy ravenously devour at his soul. The devouring power was simply too strong. Impossible. Alat frantically tried to resist. Die. Alot wildly chopped at Brody with his sickle, but each blade was only able to leave a scar on Brody's body and go no further in. In the blink of an eye, though, even the scar would disappear. It could be said that Brody had an indestructible body. Impossible? Completely impossible. Alot had never heard of something like this before. You are actually able to endure. Brody's face changed. This is because my soul is too weak, so the amount of energy I am able to control is too low. Rumble, the red caltrip diamond emitted a trembling sound, and a bizarre, icy cold green light surged forth, filling Alot's body. As this surge of icy energy joined as well, Alot was no longer able to resist, and his soul was instantly devoured. The many tribal warriors below were all stunned. They just saw a green light flash, and then, Alot died. That is. The face of the curly brown-haired elder, Bariman, changed. He was an expert on par with Alot, and his divine sense discovered that the green light was emanating from a red caltrip diamond. A red caltrip diamond? Can it be? Bariman suddenly thought of something he had once heard of. He couldn't help but feel shocked. Swoosh. Bariman didn't stay in the tribe any further, immediately, stealthily fleeing. Vidanica. Brody grew agitated as he excitedly flew towards the castle.